Welcome to Late Night Story. When the world goes silent and shadows stretch longer, some stories awaken, whispered only to those still awake. So put on your headphones, turn down the lights, and let me guide you through the quiet hours. If you're listening alone, you're exactly where you need to be. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world, don't forget to subscribe before you drift too far into the dark.
Story 1. She swore I was nothing more than a hallucination created to test her. I used to think I was just in a bad relationship. Toxic, controlling, the kind people warn you about. But now, I'm not even sure I was in a relationship at all. I don't know what to call it anymore. She was my girlfriend for almost 2 years. At first, she was everything I wasn't. Loud, funny, fearless. I'm quiet, careful, the kind of guy who double-checks the door locked twice before bed. She pulled me out of my shell, made me feel seen. I fell hard. The controls started small. Text me when you get there. Don't keep your phone on at night. It's bad for you. Don't say that word. Just trust me. I laughed it off at first. I thought she was just quirky, protective, maybe a little paranoid. Nothing serious. But then things changed. She showed me pictures from a friend's birthday. I know I was there. I stood by the fridge half the night because it was too crowded in the living room. I remember holding my beer while people laughed around me. But when she scrolled through her phone, picture after picture, I wasn't in any of them, not even blurred in the background. I laughed nervously. Weird. I was right there. She tilted her head, smiled faintly. Maybe you just think you were. I said, no, I was literally standing next to you. Her smile didn't change. If you say so. My stomach dropped. A week later, I texted her that I'd be home late from work. When I got back, she was cold, distant. You didn't tell me you'd be late, she said. Yes, I did. I pulled out my phone, showed her the message. Sent at 5:12 p.m. 2 check marks. Read. She opened her phone, pulled up our chat and held it out. No message. My text wasn't there. She stared at me, calm, almost amused. See? You didn't send anything. You only think you did. I wanted to scream, but instead I just stood there, heart racing. She began asking me questions I couldn't answer. Are you sure you're real? Why do you always feel like a placeholder? Do you remember things that didn't happen? Sometimes she whispered it like she was testing me. Sometimes she said it casually, like asking about the weather. At first I thought she was joking. Then I realized she wasn't. One night, I woke up and saw her phone glowing on the table. She was asleep. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. There were folders, labeled things like tests, shadows, phases. Inside, photos of me, sleeping, cooking, sitting on the balcony. But the angles were strange, always just enough to make me look not solid, off, like a background element, not a person. One video had me talking, but there was no sound, just my mouth moving while faint music played over it. I felt sick. I put her phone back and lay there wide awake until morning. When I asked her about it, she didn't deny anything. She just said, "You weren't supposed to see that. You're disrupting the process." That word stuck with me. Process. She started talking more about tests and phases. She told me her job was classified. They're watching how I react, she said once. Who? I asked. She just smiled. If I tell you, you'll disappear. She said it so casually, like she was reminding me to take out the trash. I tried leaving once. I packed my bag, shoes half on, socks mismatched. I was halfway out the door when she said softly, "If you walk away, they'll know you broke character. Is that what you want?" I froze. She looked so calm, sitting there with a blanket around her shoulders, watching me. You can play along, or you can ruin the experiment. Either way, I'll be fine. You won't. I don't know why, but I put the bag down. We had dinner with my mom. Afterwards, driving home. She said, "You know you weren't actually there, right?" I laughed bitterly. "What the hell are you talking about?" "I ate the damn pasta." She shook her head, almost sad. "I ate alone with your mother. You weren't there. You imagined these things." I pulled the car over, hands gripping the wheels so tight my knuckles turned white. "Stop. Just stop." She leaned over, whispered in my ear, "If I react wrong, they'll delete you." I started writing everything down, keeping receipts, taking photos of meals before eating, counting tiles in the bathroom to see if they stayed the same every day. It sounds insane, I know, but when someone is erasing you piece by piece, you'll cling to anything solid. I finally snapped. I yelled at her, told her she was lying, gaslighting me, breaking me down. She just stood there, expressionless, while I screamed. Then she whispered, "You're not supposed to know." I grabbed her phone. Code 2222. Easy. I opened the folders again. More photos of me, more videos, more evidence of nothing. She didn't fight me for phone. She just watched. When I finally looked up, she said, "You've ruined it now. You're contaminating the study." I left that night, stayed on a friend's couch, thought maybe it was over. 2 weeks later, I saw her in the store, middle of the day. She was standing by the exit, holding a bag, neutral expression, not angry, not happy, just watching. I walked up to her before I could think. "Hey, hi, how are you?" "Fine." It was small talk, but the air around us felt heavy, like my chest was filling with sand. Finally, I blurted out, "I'm real. I don't care what you think. I'm real." She tilted her head, eyes steady, voice quiet. "You're still here? They haven't deleted you yet." My blood went cold. That's the last time we spoke. Since then, I've noticed small things. Lights flickering, messages appearing on my phone, then vanishing before I can read them. Screenshots that come out blank. The other night, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No return address. Inside was a single photo. My kitchen, my phone on the table. The same angle I always sit at. Only, I wasn't in the picture. On the back, in messy handwriting, it said, "Do not feed." I don't know if she planted it, or if someone else did. I don't know if this is still about her, or if it ever was. But I can't stop thinking about what she said that day. "You're part of a test. You were never real." Story 2. The Malevolent Passenger. There are certain rumors that cling to a place like the stench of stagnant water. Unshakable, festering, retold until their edges blur. Our town has such a rumor, and it centers not on a house or a graveyard, but upon a lonely stretch of a county road, where the pines press inward like conspirators, and the fog seems bred from the earth itself. They say the road belongs to her, him, it, the hitchhiker. It takes many guises, yet its essence never alters, an intruder garbed in borrowed skin. I began collecting these accounts not from idle curiosity, but from a gnawing hunger that no rational man should indulge. I sought out those who had seen the hitchhiker, spoken to them, ferried them through that black-bowed corridor of asphalt. Their words came haltingly, thick with reluctance, as though each syllable carved something irretrievable from their memory. The first was a long-haul driver, one of those roughened men who seldom yield to superstition. He told me he picked up a girl in her 20s, backpack slung, smiling like she'd walked out of a roadside diner. They shared a cigarette. They joked about weather and wages. Then, mid-laughter, she leaned close and whispered in a voice not hers, but something ancient and androgynous. "You fat piece of shit. There's a reason your family left you. Now you will die choking, coughing black foam, until what family you left won't be able to look at you." He told me. He looked at her in anger and shock, but she was just smiling, as though she'd said nothing. He left her on the shoulder and drove until the sky bled dawn. He told me this while chain-smoking, his hands trembling so hard the ash scattered like snow. He died of emphysema less than a year after we had spoke. Then came the farmer's wife, a devout woman. Said she'd been driving home from Bible study when she saw a young boy on the roadside, clutching a teddy bear. So she stopped and opened her door to him. He climbed in. The scent of mildew and iron hit her, but she thought nothing of it other than she wanted to help the boy, so she offered him water and asked where his parents were, but he only stared. Then, with a sudden grin too broad for a child's face, he said, "God doesn't see you. He never did. When you kneel, you'd be better suited to be kneeling for cock rather than an empty throne." The woman swore his face collapsed in on itself as she watched in awe, like clay melting in flame, before he simply stepped out while the car was still moving. She wrecked her Buick in the ditch. Since then, she hadn't spoken the Lord's name without trembling, but then they found her dead inside the local church with the word slut written in blood across her forehead. As if my curiosity wasn't already as piqued as it was, the sheriff himself, our so-called pillar law, came to speak to me about how he'd once stopped on that same road as the others to offer aid to a middle-aged man in a suit, stranded and waving. The man slid into the back seat, polite, well-spoken, until suddenly he spat vile epithets about the sheriff's dead mother. Detailed things no stranger could know. The color of her coffin lining, the hymn she hated sung over her grave, and then, without missing a beat, started going into detail about the sheriff's wife killing herself and his daughter being a dirty little whore. The sheriff broke down into tears. Then, reacting on pure anger, he pulled over and hopped out his patrol car with his gun drawn, but he found the backseat empty. He retired 2 months after we had spoke, and then they found him dead in a motel room with a shotgun in his hands and his brains splattered all over the walls. So many stories, each wrapped in the same terror. The shifting of faces, the friendliness curdling into filth, the vulgarities that felt more like prophecies than insults, all ending in inevitable deaths. Yet, for all the warnings, for all the trembling mouths that spoke them, my curiosity only grew. Some compulsion stronger than reason or faith gnawed at me. I needed to see her. Him. It. To know if the hitchhiker would choose a face for me. To know what they would whisper in my ear before vanishing back into the fog. No two witnesses agreed upon their features, save that all had felt a nauseous terror when in its company, as though some formless thing pressed against the membranes of their minds. I had listened to these stories with the arrogant disbelief of one who thought himself immune to superstition, and yet something in their fragmented accounts stirred me. Not merely curiosity, but an urge, an almost perverse compulsion, to see for myself. Perhaps it was the same instinct that drives men to the edge of cliffs, the whisper urging them to step forward into nothingness. So one night, under a moon bruised with clouds, I set out. The roads were narrow and unlit, hemmed by skeletal pines that rattled in the wind. My headlights carved 2 pale corridors through the dark, yet could not penetrate the blackness beyond the roadside. The silence inside my car was oppressive. Even the hum of the engine seemed swallowed by the night. Then I saw her, a figure, slender and still, standing at the gravel shoulder. The first thing that struck me was not her form, but her composure, motionless, unbothered by the whipping wind, as if she had been waiting precisely for me. When my beams touched her, she raised her arms slowly, thumb out. My heart stuttered in my chest, for in that pale glow I could not tell her age or face. It seemed to shift as I watched, first youthful, then matronly, then something inhuman in its formlessness, but when I blinked, she appeared merely as a woman perhaps 30 years, with hair dark as pitch and eyes luminous, too luminous, in the cold light. I stopped, and then the door opened with a groan. She slid into the passenger's seat with a grace that made no sound. Her scent was faint, metallic, like rusted iron. "Kind of you," she said, her voice warm at first, musical even. Not many stop anymore. I nodded mutely and pulled back onto the road. For a time, our conversation was unremarkable. She asked my name, and I told her. She asked where I was bound, and I answered vaguely. Anywhere, nowhere, I only wish to drive. Her laughter then was pleasant, almost girlish, but then, without warning, her tone curdled. "Your hands," she remarked softly. "They look like the hands of a coward. Have you ever strangled a man? Or does your strength only reach as far as a woman's throat?" I glanced at her, startled. Her face appeared altered, the cheekbones sharper, the eyes sunken, her smile cruel. But when I blinked, She was again the benign stranger, gazing out at the forest with calm serenity. "Forgive me," she said sweetly. "I say such things without thinking. A bad habit." The road stretched on. My knuckles whitened on the wheel. She slipped again moments later. "Your mother never wanted you, did she? I can smell it on you. She prayed you be stillborn, but you clung like a worm in her belly." I opened my mouth to speak, to protest even, but the words shriveled in my throat. Her face in the dim light was now ancient, as though the decades had melted her skin. Her lips peeled back from teeth that seemed longer than before. Then she laughed softly, as if the cruel words had never been uttered. "Oh, don't be so cross." I teased. The air grew heavy. A stench of damp earth and rot filled the car, though no window was open. My ears rang faintly, like a great pressure weight against my skull. I felt the sensation of eyes upon me. Not hers alone, but countless unseen gazes pressing from outside, beyond the glass, beyond the trees, as if the forest itself had leaned close to witness. I drove faster, and my breath came short. She hummed a tune beside me, low, droning, discordant. "You'll leave me soon," she said after a while, her tone wistful. "But you'll see me again. You all do. I wear many faces, many skins. Sometimes I am a daughter, sometimes a bride. Sometimes I'm your own reflection, waiting at the bend in the road." Her head turned toward me then, slowly, impossibly far, until her chin nearly brushed her shoulder. Her eyes glowed faintly, like lanterns sunk deep in water. "Do you know," she whispered, voice thick with a guttural resonance, "what rides with you now?" The headlights flickered. For an instant, I swear the road dissolved into a vast black plain. Stars wheeling above and towering over all was a figure without form. Wings, tendrils, limbs too many to count. Its shadow falling across eternity. And then in an instant, the road was back. The pines, the gravel shoulder, too. My car shuddered as though waking from a dream. She was gone. The seat beside me empty, though it was still warm and the faint metallic stench lingered. I did not stop driving until dawn broke. I should have turned back. I should have left well enough alone, but I tell you now, in the style of those ancient chronicles of madness, that I know I will see her again. For in every reflective surface I have glimpsed since, in mirrors, in windows, in pools of rainwater, I have seen faces that are not my own. Some nights, when the wind is still, I hear her humming. After some weeks since that first encounter, the days since had not been days at all, but a disjointed succession of visions, interruptions, and choked awakenings from half-sleep. The presence of that woman, if such it is, had still yet to fully be departed. Every road I drive, I search for her, not willingly at first. God knows I swore never to tempt fate twice, but rather as one whose wound festers despite his best efforts to bandage it. She does not merely haunt a single stretch of highway, but rather, she haunts me. It was a moonless night when I saw her again. My car, restless as my own mind, had carried me far beyond the town into black reaches of county road where no lamp stands and where the forest presses close to the thin strip of asphalt. I had no intention of finding her, and yet I saw her. At first I thought a trick of memory, merely a woman walking alone, thumb raised, the pale of her hand flashing in my headlights, but as the beam struck her form I realized it was indeed her, yet her face was not the same as before, nor was it different. It was a blasphemous compromise between the two, as though every feature were a composite of uncountable masks, and yet no one mask stayed long enough to be trusted. I slowed, though my heart implored me to keep going. My hands did not obey as they turned the wheel and then opened a passenger door. She entered without ceremony. This time, her smile was wider, a thin wound of a mouth that curved too far. "I knew you'd come back," she said, her voice at once a purr and a hiss, at once the laughter of a girl and the groan of some oceanic beast in the deep. My throat closed around words, but I forced them out. "I don't remember choosing to." "Oh, you chose. You always choose. That's the curse of your kind. Thinking choices are made in moments, when really they were made ages ago." I looked ahead, unwilling to meet her shifting face. "Where do you need to go?" "Just drive," she said quickly, then laughed like glass shattering. I continued to drive as the silence stretched, broken only by her voice slithering in and out of moods. At times she was sweet, humming a tune that reminded me of childhood lullabies, only to stop mid-note and spit. Your mother hated you, you know. She told me. She told us. At other moments, she was vulgar, her every word dripping with obscenity, describing my own body in degrading detail, as though she could see through flesh and bone to all the ugly parts that even I dared not name. You're rotting, she whispered suddenly. Right there, beneath the skin of your chest. You feel it, don't you? A soft place. A wrong place. I did. God help me, I did. My hand rose to my sternum and pressed, and for a moment I swore the bone there gave. She laughed again. The forest outside grew thicker, the road narrower. I realized with a coldness deeper than fear that I no longer recognized where I was. The mile markers had ceased and the road signs vanished. She leaned closer, her face flickering between girl, crone, and corpse. Do you know what I am? She breathed. I tried to answer, but my tongue cleaved the roof of my mouth. I am everybody's last ride, she said, grinning with teeth that multiplied the longer I looked. Every lost man's last companion. The hand they take when the road stops. The mouth that whispers before the long silence. Do you want to know where I'm really going? I shook my head, but she told me anyway. I am going home and you're coming with me. Her hand shot out, faster than thought, and pressed flat against my chest. Fire and ice coursed through me at once. My vision blurred. I could see the forest bending away from us, trees contorting in terror, as though they too feared her. She leaned into my ear, voice a jagged rasp. Drive faster, faster, take me all the way in. My foot, traitor to my soul, pressed the accelerator. The car roared forward, the world outside dissolving into streaks of shadow and pale mist. The last thing I recall clearly is her laughter, piercing, triumphant, unending. The road was gone, the car was gone, and I was no longer sure where my body ended and hers began. Now, as I scrawl this with what strength remains, I know she never truly left. She abides in the pulse of my veins, the tremor of my bones, and in the black corners of every room. Perhaps she abides in these very words, so that when another pair of eyes trace them, they too shall see the haunting hitchhiker standing by the roadside, waiting. Story 3. My family had one rule: never raise your voice at home. I'm sure at least some people will be able to relate to this. My childhood was odd. At the time, I couldn't see that there was anything wrong with it. I couldn't understand it when things happened that weren't normal. I went to school, had friends, and played games like any other kid. I had loving parents and an annoying sister, just like many other kids my age did. My grandparents, aunts, and uncles would often visit. I didn't like when my grandmother came. She was a strict woman, and honestly, she scared me. I can remember vividly one summer she came over. She looked my sister and I up and down, then turned to my father and asked, "What about the other one? I thought you said get it over with and end this farce." He pulled her aside and told my sister and I to go play outside. She left that night and never came to visit again. There were so many things that I never learned should be questioned. I never comprehended that they were something I should question. Most of them felt small at the time. We had a picture of our family tree in our hallway, a long line of sibling pairs as far back as anyone remembered, and yet by each of them was space for a third. My mother would bring in extra groceries every trip, and sometimes set an extra plate of dinner, then quietly put away again. But there was one rule that we were never to break. We weren't allowed to speak at home. Rather, we weren't allowed to raise our voices above a whisper. Whether in anger, laughter, or even by accident, loudness in general was treated as taboo as soon as we set foot on the driveway. On the few occasions we raised our voices, our father's anger always fell hardest on me. My sister cried, but she was spared. I didn't understand why my mother never comforted either of us until much later, and it cost me far more than I would have been willing to trade. I really want to emphasize that this was always the norm to me. I didn't understand what it meant. I didn't know I should be worried or scared. Despite this, like I mentioned earlier, I did have a good childhood. My parents truly loved us both, and it was rare that we got into trouble. I had a lot of friends at school, and I'd often spend the majority of my day at one of their houses, playing PS2 or taking advantage of their trampoline, which I had always been envious of. My dad didn't like it. Anytime I wanted to get permission for a playdate or a sleepover, I would ask my mom. This would be followed by tense, coarse whispers between the two of them in their room. Sometimes they'd let me, other times not. Hindsight truly is a taunting thing. I can't tell you how many nights I spent laying awake wishing my dad had won those hushed arguments. I wished to myself as I tossed and turned that I hadn't been born to my parents, that I hadn't been born at all. But even more vicious than hindsight is the past itself. It stands with absolute resoluteness. It is unchangeable and unforgettable, a wound that never heals until the day the afflicted passes away. Siblings are supposed to be mean to each other when they're young. It's part of how they grow up, how they learn social skills. So when my friend suggested that we scare my sister during a sleepover, I was immediately on board. I wasn't allowed to have friends over at our house, but I told them I could record it all and show them the next day. I was beyond excited to have something to rub in my sister's face. She was the eldest, and I wanted to get the upper hand on her for once. As any little girl would, she screamed when she saw the rubber snake under her pillow. It wasn't a long scream. She covered her mouth with her hands almost as soon as it left her lips, but it was enough. There was a moment of silence right after she screamed that felt never-ending. Then my parents ran into the room. They saw her, mouth still covered and eyes wide with terror. Then the toy snake on her bed. My father cursed under his breath before scooping up my sister into his arms. My mother looked like she was going to cry. Her eyes darted down even before the noises began. Scratching. Something was scratching the wooden floor underneath our feet. Light at first soft, almost as if it was asking to be let in politely. Then louder, louder and louder until it was violently clawing away the wood like tissue paper. The boards bent first, bowing upward as if the house itself were breathing. Then they split, splinters flying, and something began to crawl through. When my father saw what had emerged from below our feet, he set my sister down and stepped away. All he said was, "I'm sorry." He didn't sound angry. He didn't sound afraid. Just tired, like he'd been waiting for this, as if he had expected it. It was small. We had raccoons in our backyard that my sister and I would try to catch. At that moment, that's the only size comparison that I could think of. It crawled on its hands and knees, bloated and red, as if its skin was being pulled taut over too much its own body. A putrid, fleshy cord dangled over its shoulders, coiling around its neck before disappearing into its own swollen belly. How could something so sickly, so small, be so strong? Its eyes locked onto my sister, and I jumped between the two. My mother cried out, "No!" Before either of my parents could move, the rotten child seized my ankle and hurled me across the room as if I were a toy soldier. I hit the wall, and my mom came to pick me up, both shielding and restraining me. But even if I had broken free, it wouldn't have mattered. In seconds, it had her. My sister's nails scraped across the floorboards. Her muffled cry cut short as the thing dragged her into the hole below. I heard her scream again, but this time it wasn't her hands that silenced it. The sound of flesh being torn from sinew, ligaments snapping, bones breaking. Then her voice called again. "Mom, Dad." It pulled itself back up from the darkness. The sight of it now forced me to vomit on the floor. It was bigger, but wrong. Its arms and legs were uneven, its hands a clutter of mismatched fingers, as though it had been played with bones the way a child plays with toys, jamming them into place, trying to look like my sister. Patches of her brown hair sprouted from swollen, red skin, clumps of it slicked with blood. Her white teeth were crammed into its gray gums, sharp and uneven, like butcher knives buried in raw meat. But worst of all were the eyes. They were her eyes. I could still see the fear they held only moments ago, the betrayal and terror she had experienced. My father scooped my sister up in his arms and carried her out of the room. I could hear her monstrous, joyful cries as she tried to use her new, stolen voice. The rest of my childhood was spent pretending pretending the monster had always been my sister, pretending that her laugh was hers, that her smile was hers. I was punished more harshly for mistreating her than I ever was for breaking the rule of silence. I moved out when I turned 16 and continued my game of pretend. I pretended my childhood never happened, that I was a normal man with a normal past and a normal family. Only one thing brings me comfort now. No matter how much my parents beg and plead and yell and berate, I will never have children. This ends with me, and it ends with her. Story 4. The devil came to my confessional booth and confessed to me that things horrible beyond comprehension have seized control of hell. Heaven is next of all the nights for the devil to visit. He chose one that was calm. No great storms, no loud bashes of lightning and thunder. It was a quiet evening, cloudless, the stars blotted out by the lights of the city. I was on the late shift at the confessional booth. It was the 11th hour, and no one had yet come to use my services. I was nodding off in my chair when the door to the other side of the booth was pulled open. Someone stepped in and sat down. I had heard no one enter the cathedral. The approach of a potential confessor was usually accompanied by great and echoed footsteps as they traversed the stone floor to the wooden cubicle. This one had come in so silently that until the moment they pulled open the door, I had believed myself to be alone. I was still in a state of half-doze, so I blinked several times to wake myself and turned to view the confessor through the grate. I could not make out their face through the wooden screen, and the shadow which filled their compartment obscured most of their finer features. But I could tell that they were male and that they were dressed richly. The confessor wore a suit that looked exquisite, and from the clinking sound his hands made, I could tell they were covered with rings. They glinted and cast strange warped light rays on the ceiling that reminded me of ancient worms wriggling in primordial ooze. "Good evening, Father." That voice, smooth as oil, like the glint off of a freshly sharpened knife, with the note of a coin just flipped. Pure, almost celestial in origin. It rolled pleasingly on my ears, and I was brought to ease. "Forgive me, for I have sinned. It has been eons uncounted since my last confession." Despite the smoothness of his voice, his words struck an uncertain chord within me. "That is an unusual beginning, my son." The man chuckled. "Allow me to explain, Father. I am Lucifer. I have service in an expansive and varied area when it comes to saints and sinners." This was not the first time I had been in the booth and heard the person on the other side admit to being the devil. Most times, such delusions did not interfere with the process. I treated them as any other, spoke to them of their wrongdoings, and tried to give a modicum of hope that they would be made whole, that one day they would be free of their fevered mind. This man was different. It must have been a growing dread I felt at his arrival. But I looked at him more closely through the divider. His eyes found mine, and I saw them clearly, even though his face was still shrouded in the gloom. Brown irises so dark they were almost black. As I searched, I noted he bore none of the popular hallmarks of the Prince of Darkness. No horns, goat's hooves, or the smell of sulfur. This man had the smell of cheap wine and the vestments of an investment broker. But in my heart, the truth of the matter grew like a weed. I could not deny it. I was convinced by the darkness the man had brought, and the unease I felt in the corners of my mind. It was the same primeval instinct that tells animals they are in the presence of a predator. He was not lying, my confessor. As sure as I would know the Christ if he walked in my door, I knew this being to be the devil himself. My mouth went dry. My mind went silent. And the only words I could utter were those which had been ingrained into me by habit. "Do you wish to confess?" The devil laughed. It was a soft sound, 2 parts pain and 1 part joyless mirth. It filled the whole space, but made everything feel hollow. When he spoke again, I noticed his voice slurred slightly, like one inebriated. "I suppose I have. It sounds odd even to me. I didn't know that I would come here until my feet took the path. I waited. My tongue had frozen to the roof of my mouth. I feared my immortal soul if I were to say the wrong thing to Satan. The devil took my silence as an offer of compliance. I hope you will understand if I do not make the sign of the cross, considering present company. Quite all right, my son. Lucifer is fine, Father. I swallowed. I reminded myself I was in the place of God, that the devil held no power here. But still, I could not keep my knees from trembling beneath my robe. My heart fluttered within my chest with great entropy. Very well, Lucifer. What do you wish to confess? The devil went quiet. His head bowed in thought. I saw him gather his thoughts, and my fear left me enough so that the gesture struck me as odd. I had only seen such movement before in those humbled. I did not know the devil to be contemplative. Satan began to speak. I confess, hell is no longer mine. Do you mean in that it has been saved through Christ? Even as I spoke, I felt foolish. The devil laughed again. I almost wish that were the case. Does that speak to how dire the situation is? But I suppose you already knew that. I am here after all. I waited, but the pause continued. How then is hell no longer yours? The devil did not answer for a moment. I heard him sigh, and heard the clink of gold as he wrung his hands together in his lap. What do you know of my history, Father? You fell from heaven. You rebelled against God. You seek to destroy his work. You've studied your own book. Well done, but it is correct in that regard. Yes, I rebelled against God, and yes, I was cast down because of it. The devil took another moment. The initial fear of him was wearing off. As my mind began to work, I again questioned the strangeness of our meeting. I had expected something more like staring into the jaws of a lion. Instead, it was like seeing an old, ill-met acquaintance. The devil spoke again. Yes, I confess, I wish to take control of God's kingdom. I confess to the sin of ambition, if such a sin even exists. I believed I could do better. So wasn't I morally obligated to see it through? Even when I was cast down, I still gathered legions to my side. What was that you people said all those years ago? That God incarnate would come down and allow himself an ignominious death? A fool's bet, I said. I had met God. He would not do it. He could not do it. He was soft. He could not even bring himself to destroy me. And I had done many things to deserve such a punishment. God had limits. But he did do it. My own boldness surprised me. I saw the devil turn to look at me. The unnerving idea came that not only could he see me in perfect detail behind the screen, but that he could see through my very skin and into the darkest desires of my soul. When he spoke, his voice was soft, and I felt that sense of danger return to me. Cold sweat broke out across my brow. The devil's voice barely broke above a whisper. Yes, he did. For a moment, I held my breath, praying silently to Christ to preserve me. I felt no calming sense of peace, only the stillness of a deaf heaven. The devil remained quiet as he continued. I take no offense, Father. You are not the first to speak those words to me. The minute Christ rose from that tomb, I lost what control I had over my subjects. In their eyes, I was wrong, no longer to be trusted. Odd, considering they were the ones to give me the moniker Lord of Lies. Mammon was the first to rebel. He led the most away. That made everyone bolder, and Lilith left soon after. Then there was Baal with his priests that seemed to serve everyone and anyone just for some small notoriety. He had never gotten over that Elijah debacle. Felt like he needed to prove himself. They all slaughtered each other. Hell was bathed in the blood of demons for almost a century. And is this why you have come to me? I shivered as I felt the devil's gaze upon me once more. Patience, Father. Isn't that what you preach? It was silent for a long time. I forced myself to remain quiet. I had begun to sweat. Even though my cubicle felt icy cold, I was left with nothing. None of my subjects remained loyal. I was watching the battle for hell as a spectator. No one rallied to my banner. No one remained loyal to the one they had elected as Lord. Somehow, among my own people I had fallen a second time. It was inexcusable, but I had nowhere left to turn. No manner of recompense. He stopped speaking again, but this time I felt something more than just dread. A great turning point, suspended above us. I do not profess the gift of prophecy. The feeling inside of me was not so divine. I felt some insanity compel me. some unevolved part of myself begging for him to stop, to halt the confession, and not to hear any more. I knew that if I continued to listen, I risked stepping over the precipice of insanity and into the roiling waters of psychosis. I held my soul in one hand, haggling with infinity for the price of a devil's story. In my foolishness, I disregarded it all. I stayed silent and ushered in my own damnation. Father, the devil's voice was soft again. Do you know there are depths deeper than hell? Darknesses where even I have not ventured? The folly of the learned man is he thinks he has gone further than all else. I share his shame. In my search for the power to crush the rebellions of hell, I stumbled on that which I should not have even considered. Things God himself would not challenge. Things that were meant to remain untouched. Through the screen, I saw the devil look down to his hands, almost as a child confronted with their own misdeeds. They were rumors at first, odd mentions, stories forgotten, but I searched them, and as I investigated, those rumors grew into theories, and then into realities. Underneath the bedrock of creation was might untapped. I was certain of it. With that certainty, I went into the dark and wandered for a century. The devil turned to look at me again. In the shadow, I saw his eyes clearly as I had before. In them, I saw the seeds of madness, but something else, something embedded deep in the loam of his pupils. Fear. I found things, entities that existed before God himself. Creatures whose names I would not utter even in the full light of day. Beings twisted with a greater malice. A primal pain that substituted comprehension for raw power. They understood nothing but the desire to pull every organized molecule and subparticle into a storm of devastation. The devil's voice hitched. He swallowed. In the early days, I would have never, but I was desperate. I became aware of an empty feeling around me, a void that grew stronger in the devil's silence. In the booth, I felt the sight of 1,000 eyes upon me, and I wished to hide. But I could not. I knew I could not. I had stepped over the threshold, and in discerning these beings, I had given them the power to see me as well. Lucifer continued. I tried to tell them my old subjects. I warned them of what would happen if they persisted in their petty war. I was the true master of hell. I had built this place up from rubble, in the very defiance of God himself, and still they dismissed me. When I told them of the great evil I had at my fingertips, they did not believe me. They thought my mind broken. Imagine that. In the devil's next pause, I hazarded a moment to speak. I could no longer exist in silence without fearing my own annihilation to beings unseen. What did you do? The devil looked at his hands again, so childlike. I woke them. Unbidden to my mind leapt images of carnage. I did not know if it was a vision, but I saw hell reduced to rubble. I felt that void again, a twisting and roiling mass that made my mind race. I saw it grow to swallow the devil's kingdom, and felt its hunger as if it were my own. I felt my soul cry out in anguish as it was torn asunder by the feeling of chaos and nothingness. I knew if I persisted in this state for long, I would lose my mind. Then, all in a moment, I was returned to my booth. So swallowed up in what I had seen, I almost missed the devil's next words, and the slight tremble that they contained. All I desired was God's throne. I knew I could be better. I could do better. Those beings which now inhabit hell, those who now rule the destiny of men and gods, they are not like you or I. They desire neither control nor salvation. To them, both heaven and hell are so much detritus on the cosmic ocean. I heard the clink of gold again, and I assumed the devil was playing with his rings. I confess, hell is no longer mine, and soon the earth will no longer be God's. Nothing will. I stared at the devil through the screen. He looked at me, and in his veiled countenance, I saw the true misery of damnation. What I had thought was a terrible joke, a trick, was in fact a most sincere form of remorse from the Prince of Darkness, a sin that even he felt the need to confess. The devil looked at me again, and I could tell we both felt empty. For what it's worth, I apologize, Father. I had hoped to rule this world. Now I must watch it crumble. It will end in smoke and rot. The very gates of heaven will rust and disintegrate. The bodies of angels will lie in the streets to fester. The demons already lie in the dust. A day, a week, a millennium. Who knows when what I woke will ascend? But mark my words, it will ascend. And I will be sole witness to the ending of God, a lone atom in the chaos of uncreation. That is my cross, and I will bear it forever. The devil paused, then continued. This is all I can remember, Father. I am sorry for this, my greatest sin. For a moment, I was so swallowed up in hopelessness that I forgot to offer penance. But what penance could I offer? When I looked through the grate again, the devil had left. I stumbled out and tried to follow him, but found no trace. No evidence he had come and conversed with me, that he had confessed to the imminent end of everything. I do not know if I crossed the threshold of insanity that night or the night following. After the devil's confession, I went home and slept through the day and into the next night. In my sleep, I had a dream. I wandered in the dark. Great things moved around me. Things with slithering bodies and many limbs. Small perverse things with claws that bit and tore. Creatures with terrible wings. Bodies made up of concentric circles upon circles that defied all logical thought. They were separate, but conjoined into one great being that overswept all. Before me appeared a great throne made from dark stone. I set myself thereupon, and was swallowed up in a whirl of things known and unknown. I felt the chair beneath me crumble, and great cracks open up in my own body. My blood spilled and was turned to steam by the heat of the great and terrible ones that then brought the entire scene to an abrupt nothingness. And once there was nothing left to tear, rip, or destroy, they left. Only the void remained. In that freezing vacuum, I passed 1,000 years. Then I awoke. I am no prophet. I do not pretend to know if such things are portents to come. I know I am insane, but the devil promised that those below would ascend. I wait in dread for that day, the day the Lord of Hell promised would come with fear in his eyes. Story 5. A weekend in Appalachia. Who doesn't like a good road trip, right? The sights, the people, the experience as a whole is just amazing. Or maybe that's just me. I've dedicated the last month to driving across the country. I'm luckily able to, as my job allows me to work from anywhere that has an internet connection. Cybersecurity, to be exact. I started in Florida and worked my way through the southeast region of the U.S. After moving through both of the Carolinas, I decided to swing by Tennessee while I was around. And I've got to say, the place was beautiful. The large metropolitan areas meshing with the deep forest was an amazing experience to be a part of. However, it wasn't always good. For example, in some of the more densely forested areas, I found it difficult to find coffee shops and other places with free Wi-Fi to work at. Luckily, however, GPS exists, and it's usually not too long until I find one. And if I can't, then I'll find somewhere where I can rent out for the night while I work. Well, one day after having very bad luck finding any establishments with free Wi-Fi so deep in the mountains, I got very lucky and was able to find a very nice 3-bedroom Airbnb cabin in the mountains for just $50 a night. After confirming payment for one night, I head to the area where the house is at. As I'm driving to the cabin, I can't help but feel uneasy. This place is really deep into the forest. I must have been driving for at least 30 minutes straight, just going deeper into the forest and mountain range, all the while the road keeps thinning and lowering in quality all the way. What had started as a strong, well-made 2-lane asphalt road eventually turned into a decrepit 1-lane dirt road that barely even had a clear path, mostly thanks to the massive trees on either side accompanied by the brush occasionally having grown on the road. Why in the hell would someone live this far out? I asked myself, frustrated with the condition of the area. Even this far into the road trip, I haven't gone down a road this bad yet. First time for everything, I guess. Eventually, after a few minutes of driving down the rundown road, if you can call it that, and I finally see it, the cabin. And I won't lie, this place was definitely worth the drive. It looked to be about 2,000 square feet, made of very fine finish with logs and gorgeous windows, giving an amazing look into the forest. Walking into the house, I'm surprised with how homey it looks. The first room is a living room lit by a familiar and warming orange glow. Looking straight past the living room is the kitchen, sizable but not large. and nothing really notable about it. The living room, however, had a very elevated roof and a fireplace at the right wall. A few taxidermied animal heads lay about it, as well as the skull of an animal I don't think I've ever seen. Looking left of the living room, I see a section couch with a very large mounted TV on a stand on the other side of the room. Looking left, I see the rest of the living room, which wasn't really anything special. Just a dining table and a few other pieces of furniture you'd expect to see in any house. Past the living room to the left was a sizable hallway, which is where my host told me the bathrooms and master bedroom were. I walked down the hall to the door at the very end, which led to the master bedroom. And again upon walking in, I'm blown away by the interior. It had a huge and very soft bed with enough pillows to smother a giant, and in front of the bed on the wall was another huge plasma TV. Walking to the right, I entered the bathroom, and of course it's lavish. Large granite countertops and a marble bathtub, as well as a huge walk-in shower. There's no way this place is just $50 a night. I say to myself, blown away by the sheer luxury of a house so far away from civilization. I sit my stuff down and head to the back door, just past the kitchen to get a look at the backyard. And it's even better than the front. There is a sizable pond that drains to a large stream flowing through the mountain. And of course, a well-kept lawn all the way up until the tree line about 50 feet away. I stand there for a moment, impressed by the amazing area I found myself in. It almost feels too good to be true. Walking back inside the lavish cabin, I go to the room to get my laptop, so I can start working, and luckily, despite the GPS shenanigans, this place does have a stable internet connection. And so, I begin my work. The hours fly by, and I don't even realize how long I've been working until my app for work closes abruptly. I look at the Wi-Fi icon at the bottom of my laptop, and sure enough, it's dark, indicating my Wi-Fi connection has stopped working for some odd reason. Glancing at the time, I see it's 8 p.m. Looking out the living room window, I also see the sun beginning to lower in the sky. But that isn't my biggest concern. My boss told me if I'm not done with this project by next week, I won't hold my position much longer. So getting this Wi-Fi back on is my biggest focus. Walking outside with my phone flashlight, I go around the house looking for cables that might have gotten unhooked or unplugged in some way. Eventually, I find the internet cable running down the side of the house and into the ground, but I'm dumbstruck as I realize the cable and the wall it's running along has massive and deep claw-looking incisions on it. Damn it, you live in the forest and don't have protected lines. I yell out in frustration, knowing that there's no way I can finish my work like this. I send a message to the host that I'm leaving early and of course let him know something shredded his cables. But when I get to the front door, I see there's pieces of paper hanging on it. At the top above a page full of writing is bold underlined letters that read, "View ASAP," taking the curious-looking papers off the door. I take it inside and begin to read it. To whomever is reading, I am sorry for what you're going to go through these next 48 hours, as it is likely you will not be alive by the end of them. However, if you read this carefully and take it seriously, you might make it out of this alive. So keep reading and take this not serious. This house was built for people like you, unsuspecting travelers, to be part of a game, not a game like the ones you see on TV. You are now a new toy for an ancient evil. No matter how skeptical or superstitious that sounds, it's the truth. Many years ago, miners uncovered something deep in a mountainside they never should have, just a couple miles from where you are now. Every year it demands someone to take part in its demented games, and if they survive 48 hours, they get to live free. But in the past 6 years, nobody has survived, and I doubt you'll be any different. This thing is good at what it does. But there is hope. There are rules you can follow that will greatly increase the chances of you surviving. These rules are a major part of whether or not you're still alive by the end of the next 2 days. Now, this entity is clever and likes to play with its food. It will likely attempt to break your mental before ever physically harming you. However, its highly unpredictable nature makes it impossible to know its intention. It is likely it will do something neither you or I can plan for, so always be on your toes. Now that you know the entity and the situation, here are the rules for you. 1. Do not go outside after dark unless you have to, and be alert when this is when it is most aggressive and active. 2. 3. Prioritize lights. It thrives in the dark. If the power goes out at some point, you need to go outside the backyard and get them back on via resetting the power box just past the tree line. If the power box fails to reset, hide somewhere in the house and pray it doesn't know where you're at. 4. 5. Barricade the windows. The windows are the easiest place of entry, and they won't protect you for even a second once it arrives. There are supplies in the basement for you. Open the trapdoor in the master bedroom closet behind the suitcases. 6. 7. 10 p.m. to 12 p.m. are the only 2 hours each day where it will not attack you. I highly suggest you use these hours for sleep. 8. 9. It will come for you after 2 to 3 hours of you reading this. Prepare as soon as possible. 10. 11. Lock the doors, but do not barricade yourself inside. The doors will hold, and you may need to go on foot. Although if you're pretty much already dead, you can't outrun this thing in its own backyard. 12. Again, I'm sorry and good luck. After I finish the papers, I just stand there for a moment, analyzing the words on the page for a few moments, dumbstruck, not knowing what to think. Was this a prank by the locals? No, I'm too deep in the forest for that. Hell, I don't know. There's no way this is real. This is something you'd write in a book. I go back to my room, balling up and tossing the fake paper into the empty fireplace for the next resident to ash. Grabbing my belongings I still had barely gotten unpacked, I rushed out of the house heading straight for my truck. I had just thrown my stuff in the back seat when I noticed something was off. My back right wheel looks weird, like maybe it was going flat. A closer look around my truck reveals something terrifying. All my tires have been slashed. It takes me a moment to fully understand the gravity of the situation. Before I'm even able to let it, I hear a terrifying sound from deep in the forest. It sounded like a person, screaming like they just had every bone in their body broken, but it wasn't right. It had some sort of distortion in it, like a cross between man and beast, like it wanted something. I don't care how dangerous or stupid it is to drive on slashed tires on a mountain. I'm getting out of here. I jump into the driver's seat, practically slam the keys into the ignition, turn, and nothing happens. The engine doesn't even stutter. There is nothing but silence. I get out of my truck and rush to the front hood and swing it open. What I see inside shakes me to my core. My entire engine block had claw marks, destroyed entirely. A mess of slashed wires and bolt pieces lay scattered, spilled oil strewn across unevenly. Fresh oil. This was recent. I don't know why, but I just stood there, staring. My mind was broken by the unbelievable horror of the situation. My deep thinking is broken again by the inhuman howl again, this time seeming angrier or maybe closer. This brings me to my bearings, and I begin sprinting back to the cabin, my eyes continually locking onto the tree line all the way. I swing open the door and instinctually lock it between my fingers, almost autonomously. Now rapidly breathing, trying to make sense of everything. I noticed something in the fireplace, the papers. I ran toward them and frantically pulled them out and unfurled them from the crumpled ball I'd left them in. I began scanning the paper, looking for anything it might have told me to do first. The rules. Rules 3 and 5 catch my eyes first. They seem to be the first things I should prioritize. I guess it's time to find this trapdoor, the third rule mentioned. Walking back to the master bedroom with haste, I can almost feel the sweat collecting on my brow as I slowly realize whoever wrote those papers weren't lying, and I may very well be dead in the next few hours. Arriving at the master bedroom's closet, I open the slide door and analyze my surroundings: clothes, shoes, suits, suitcases. Kneeling before them, I reach to the back and pull at least half sloppily to the side, and it reveals the top of the trapdoor, an old, dry, dull-colored slab of wood with rusted hinges and a crooked doorknob. Throwing the rest of the suitcases carelessly to the side, I reach for the knob and twist, having to use my whole arm to get the knob to move. And as it does, the door pops forward for a moment before eerily creaking its way open. Looking down, all I can make out is a set of stairs that look like they might collapse with every step, plunging you into the void of darkness in the basement. I guess the luxury ends here. Pulling my phone out of my pocket, I turn on the flashlight. The beam of light penetrating the veil of darkness instantly. The white light reveals a medium-sized concrete walled room covered in cobwebs and at least 50 planks of wood, the kind you always smell before you see at appliance stores. I hunch my back and twist my hips at the waist. Try not to get stuck in the tiny door frame. As soon as my shoe hits the first plank of the stairs, I hear a loud creak echo through the silence. I'm also hit with a putrid stench, a cross between roadkill and stuffy, century-old air. Regardless, I push through, each stair wailing at me as I make my way down. The final step, I can move my flashlight around the right corner to see a workbench with various tools and nails on it, but I don't think you could set anything more on it before it collapses, because of course its condition is highly subpar. I push my light further right, and nearly drop it when the light makes out the decomposing body of someone. Their stomach has massive slashes in it, and they seem to be missing an arm. Before I can even make out more of the figure on the ground, I bolt around and up the screaming stairs, not caring if one of them snapped. Once I'm back in the master bedroom, I can finally think rationally. Why did I run? Sure, there was a literal dead body down there, but there wasn't any present danger but God. That was horrifying. I now know for sure nothing in that letter was a lie. This was probably one of the earlier victims of this evil entity, or whatever the hell it is. Regardless, I don't want to be ended in the same way they or any of the others met their demise. I make my way back down there to take stock of materials, trying not to think about the rotted corpse's stench. After a very fast evaluation, and knowing my time is limited, I make my way back up the room and dump all of my belongings out of my massive travel bag and trek back to the basement to stock up on some very well-needed supplies. I stuff the bag with anything that looks like it can be used, from saws to small bolts. Anything will help. The planks were hard to fit in my bag, but I was luckily able to position them semi-vertical in a way that allowed me to lug them with me, completely convinced in my mind the extra weight is surely going to destroy one, if not all, of the planks. Luckily it doesn't, and I make it to the top and immediately begin working tirelessly, boarding any window I see, hastily slamming each nail, and sawing each board to fit the right dimensions, making multiple trips back and forth for more supplies. Out of respect, I also grab the rug from the living room and cover the body in the basement. As little as it is, it's the best I can do for now. After around an hour and a half of tireless labor, I finally nailed the last board into place over the living room window. I'm not done working, however. I also go into the kitchen and grab all the knives I see and place a few scattered around each room in case I need to grab one in a hurry, placing a smaller pocket knife into my shoe, just in case. Judging by the paper won't do much, but something is better than nothing, and right now I need all the comfort I can get. After truly finishing my work, I grab the papers off the ground and continue to read, looking for the next thing I should do. It doesn't seem like there's anything more I need to do, other than plug up my phone, then sit and wait until it's time. Pacing around the living room, I find myself compulsively checking the time, counting down each minute, and it's been about 2 hours. So the game should be beginning at any moment, and lucky for me, it's nighttime. Just 46 more hours, asterisk, asterisk. I think to myself, not feeling any more at ease, asterisk, asterisk. A few more anxious minutes pass, and I hear a familiar sound. I hear those same inhuman cries coming from the front of the house. It sounds terrifyingly close this time, just past the tree line if I had to guess. The game has begun. Almost instantly I reach for the nearest knife and hold it tight, waiting for something to happen. Although for at least a minute there's nothing. But then the silence is broken by a loud slam on the front door. It makes me jump hard, but luckily I manage to keep myself quiet. Then comes another and another. The slamming on the door becomes more and more frantic and aggressive. The slamming became so hard, I was certain the door would come down at any second. As I could see, with each impact the door shakes and trembles. Large impacts on thick wood became a ringing in my ears as the unrelenting slams continued. The sound of whatever this was so desperately attempting to get and put spears so potent into my body, I could only put my back to a wall and slide down, pointing my knife toward the door, tears rolling down my face. Thankfully, after many agonizing moments, the pounding at the door pauses. I can hear a muffled low growl come from outside before heavy footsteps tread off somewhere in the forest. Now I'm left on the floor, back to the wall in the fetal position, adrenaline coursing through every ounce of my being. Cops aren't going to save me. It's me against whatever this thing is. But what can I do other than wait this thing out? It's clear by the slamming on the door that this thing is far stronger than me or anybody I know. A knife isn't going to do anything to this thing. I sit there for a moment, racking my brain for any kind of solution that might give me an edge. Then I'm hit with a stroke of genius. There were taxidermied animal heads on a fireplace wall. There's a chance there could be a gun laying around here, somewhere the note did not detail. And maybe if I'm lucky, ammo as well. Where to look, I think to myself, racking my head for ideas. Let's start with the closets. I say to myself, hoping there is at least something I can make use of. Now walking out master bedroom into the unervingly quiet hallway, hearing every wooden board settle under my weight. I go to the closet to the right of the hall and twist the knob. Opening the door, I'm met with a veil of darkness. I look up and see a cord coming down from the ceiling, and pulling it gives light to the darkness, revealing something that fills me with unmatched hope. A box of .223 Remington rounds. This has got to be one of the best things I've seen in a long time. I scan the rest of the closet, and to my surprise, there's no gun of any kind, but I'm not worried. Where there's ammo, there's a gun. Hastily, I grab the ammo box, and I'm once again disappointed. The box feels very light. I pop open the flap of cardboard on the top, and to my horror, there are only 2 rounds in the box. I yell and throw the box at the wall, the rounds flying out and loudly clinking against the solid wood floor. Right at that moment I realize my mistake, as I hear a shriek come from outside, followed by those same thumping footsteps. I hear the steps clamber onto the porch, followed by heavy scratching going down the front door. Soon after, this creature begins slowly walking around the perimeter of the house, going from the door toward the right of the house. Just when it sounds like it's going to pass the area outside in front of me, it stops for a moment. For a second, there is nothing but me in the silence of the hallway. Hearing my heart thud against my chest rapidly. Then I hear the wood exterior of the house begin to splinter, the sound starting at ground level. But eventually it goes higher and higher until I hear the roof above me creak heavily, dust and settled cobwebs being knocked loose under the immense weight. It's climbed onto the house. Now, paralyzed in fear, I stand in the middle of the hallway, watching the dust falling, getting closer and closer to where I'm standing. It isn't long until it's right above me, and just when I think the situation couldn't possibly get worse, the lights flicker and everything goes dark. Shit, this is not good. I need to reset the power box as soon as I can, but there's no way in hell I'm going out there with this thing literally right above me. Instead, I decided to take a very big risk, albeit still less risky than going outside. I take my phone out of my pocket and hit the flashlight icon. The rest of the hallway and part of the living room is instantly illuminated by the penetrating light. Before I can make a move, however, I hear a loud thud above me, followed by another and another, as I'm showered by falling dust and God knows what else. I don't have time to think before my legs jump into action, and I quickly make a mad dash to nowhere in particular, just anywhere away from here. So I scour the floor plan, quickly trying to find a suitable place to hide before this thing is all over me. Fireplace? No. Cabinets? No. Pantry? Yes. Instantly I dash towards the double doors and swing them open and shut myself inside. Now in oppressive darkness, I can only look through the crack that separates the 2 doors and listen. Eventually the slamming on the roof stopped. I guess it was strong enough to hold. But the peaceful silence doesn't last long. I hear a piercing shriek followed by thunderous footsteps going off the roof, quickly followed by a hard shake as this thing hits ground level again. The pounding footsteps go all the way to the back of the house. For about a minute, I can hear this thing walking around and on the house, trying to find a way in, occasionally scratching and banging on different areas of the house. And for a long moment there's a pause, no noise, no footsteps, nothing but me, the dark, and my booming heart. But after maybe 30 seconds of the loudest silence in my life, I hear a sound that makes my heart drop. I hear glass shatter. Quickly after this, I hear the unmistakable sound with planks splintering and their hollow thuds bouncing off the wooden floor. Given the distance of the sound, I can assume it's somewhere on the other side of the house. Maybe the guest bedroom? Regardless, this thing has made its way into the house. There's nothing I can do now besides sit and pray it doesn't know where I'm at. After what feels like a lifetime passes, I hear another noise. It's more with splintering, but this time it's at the master bedroom door. I peek through the tiny slit in the pantry door and try to see as much as I can. And through the deep darkness, I can make out a faint orange glow, accompanied by a deep guttural growl somewhere down the hallway. Not long after slow, heavy footsteps begin making their way closer to the living room, I can hear my heartbeat get heavier than it already was, hearing the boards creak and wail under the weight of whatever this thing was. Still looking through the slit with heavy anticipation, I watch as the faint orange glow gets brighter and brighter until the entire living room is casted in the warm color. It's just when I try to get a better look into the living room when my arm hits something on a shelf, knocking it over and sending it crashing to ground with a sharp thud. Almost immediately, the orange glow snaps to the kitchen, accompanied by that same deep growl. If I hadn't already given myself away, my heartbeat surely would, as I could feel it pounding against my ribs, loud as a drum. I see the glow get brighter, and the thunderous footsteps get so close, I feel the vibration in the floor with each movement this thing made. And eventually I see it. It's so unlike anything I've ever seen. Its body was huge, easily towering at 8 feet at the least. It seemed to have fur soaked in tar wrapped around its unusually muscular frame. It walked on all fours, its front, clawed arms much stronger than the smaller and shorter hind legs. Its head was a worn deer skull adorned with cracked and broken antlers. It's now when I realize where the orange glow was coming from. Looking into its eyes, I see 2 fiery, glowing orbs. Just then it slowly twists its head to me, the orbs illuminating me through the door. No doubt this thing saw me, but it didn't attack. It just released a deep guttural laugh, turned, and left on the same path that it entered. Once I hear the pounding steps leave into the tree line, I slide down the wall of the pantry and just sit there, still trying to make sense of everything, even though I'd heard the pounding on the front door, seen the body in the basement, and now even having seen the creature, it was all so hard to believe. None of this was grounded in reality anymore. After a few moments of baffled thought, I finally remembered the power's out. I need to go outside and reset the power box before that thing came back, because if it does, I don't think it'll be here to toy with me again. So I managed to bring myself to my feet and exit the pantry. Turning on my flashlight, the vision of the house's kitchen coming quickly into view. I began walking to the back door past the kitchen. Luckily, it had a glass top, so I could look into the backyard for a moment to ensure I didn't see even the slightest orange glow. After grabbing the doorknob and hesitating for a moment, I throw the door open and begin sprinting across a large, unusually kept lawn. It's hard to tell with just my flashlight, but it seems like there's a large metal box with wiring strewn about, and I'm willing to bet that's the power box. After making it across the large backyard, I go into the tree line, right up to the metal-plated box. For a moment, I don't see anything, just a smooth gray surface of metal. I looked around the box quickly, seeing a blue button on the back of the box that read, "Reset." Instantly, I mashed the button, which causes the box to make a loud pop before humming to life. Across the lawn, I can see the warm orange glow of the house's lights. It's such a relieving sight that I almost didn't notice the pair of orange eyes on the roof, piercing through the night, looking at me. Instantly, my body locks in place, ice encapsulating every inch of my skin. Though it's nighttime and dark, I can still make out the large, muscular build of this creature, large heaving breasts exiting in a thin smoke to the nostrils of the deer skull. For what felt like ages, neither of us made a move. I felt like I was staring at this thing for so long, I had thought maybe it hadn't seen me. Maybe it was just curious about the noise the power box made. Maybe I was right, or maybe I had been blessed. But either way, the beast made one last deep growl in my direction before sluggishly disappearing behind the other half of the house's roof, disappearing into the deep, inky night. The moment I can no longer hear the thunderous footsteps, my legs kick into gear and begin throwing me across the yard of the house. I make it inside, slamming and locking the door behind me in a frantic panic. I have to fix that window, I think to myself. I hated having to go into that basement, but this was survival, and so I did, getting the boards I needed and hastily fixing the window. And as I'm fixing it, I see the smallest amount of light start to peek over the mountaintop, signaling hope and a reprieve. I've made it to the first night. As I'm leaving the guest bedroom after boarding the window, I turn to close the door behind me. But I see something strange under the bed, some kind of cloth. I go towards it and kneel down, pulling a dark green strap. And as I pull my arm back, I'm blessed with the sight of a bolt-action rifle. It's old and dusty, but it seems like it was stable enough to shoot. I spent what little time was left of the night to take apart and clean the weapon, as best as I could anyway. When I'm done, I load the 2 rounds into it and push the bolt forward, making it ready to fire. I hadn't noticed, but outside I could hear the faint sounds of birds chirping. Glancing out a window, I could see faint slits of blue through the wood boards. Hopefully this thing will back off a little with it being daytime now. I take my phone out of my pocket and see that it's 9 in the morning, 1 hour until I can finally sleep safely. Even if it's just a few hours, it's enough to keep me alert. The time seems to go by at a crawling pace. I was mostly hoping this creature wouldn't try some last trick on me before letting me get some shut-eye, and to my surprise, nothing happened. So, when 10 o'clock struck, I immediately set an alarm, so I didn't oversleep and promptly pass out on the couch. It almost feels like no time passes before a loud crash sends me flying to my feet, chest heaving and my senses clocking into overdrive as I try to gather my surroundings. At first, I see and hear nothing, but my skin feels slightly cold and the air around me seems cleaner in a way. As my eyes adjust, I can see a faint glow of moonlight casted on a forest of large pine trees. I'm somewhere in the mountains, no doubt, but how? I vividly remember collapsing onto the couch. Just then, something breaks the silence. I hear a sound I'm very familiar with. A loud thud shakes the earth beneath my feet as multiple twigs snap just a few yards away. My blood runs cold as I slowly turn around, and sure enough, my gaze meets that same creature that has been haunting me these past few hours, a mere 10 feet away. Its entire body is ink black, that same tar-like substance matting its fur glows under the moonlight, with the only other light being the fiery orange glow of its dead eyes. The beast is staring daggers right through me. A thin mist escapes from under the deer's skull with each heaving breath it makes. Then the creature leaps toward me, its huge arms fully extended outward. Then my eyes fly open, and I'm back in the cabin. For a moment, everything is still. The air is warm, and I can hear a cacophony of birds chirping amongst themselves. Despite the terrifying nature of the dream I just had, I'm surprisingly calm. I flip my phone over and check the time, 11:59. Well, that couldn't have been timed better, asterisk, asterisk. I think to myself, bringing myself to my feet, asterisk, asterisk. It wasn't a long sleep by any means. I'm definitely still tired, but it's manageable. I'll be able to make it to the next break. For a while, nothing happens. I've searched the whole house multiple times over looking for anything else of use, but nothing is uncovered. It feels as though I'm just on a regular vacation sometimes. Nothing happens for 30 minutes to an hour, and everything feels normal. I can hear the birds outside, the random call of the mountain animals, even the occasional plane overhead. I can see the morning light shining through the small cracks in between the boards on the windows. It's oddly calming considering the situation. Maybe I'm just happy it's not night, and one day closer to making it out of this hell. Around 40 more minutes pass with nothing. Deafening silence, only broken by the occasional settling of the house that sends me flying to my feet each time. I've noticed I'm so much more jumpy now. For good reason, of course. For so long the silence dragged on. Despite being so on edge, the lack of any stimulation eventually reached me, and I began to feel my eyes grow heavier as time passed. And so I began to pace around the house to make sure I didn't pass out. I also decided to go into the master bedroom bathroom to see if there could be anything of use. But despite looking to the best of my ability, I can't seem to find anything. I figure even though I've looked already, if I keep searching the rest of the house, I might find something. So I leave the bathroom and open the door to enter the hallway, where I'm stopped dead in my tracks. Right there at the entrance of the hallway stood the beast, with the corpse from the basement hanging lifeless in its jaws. And right behind it was a bolt-action rifle, my only hope, leaning on the living room couch, right where I'd left it. How? How could it have made it inside without making a noise? How did it even get to the corpse? I don't have time to think about the reality of the situation, as the beast releases its jaws, dropping the body to the floor with a solid thud. Massive tooth marks sunken deep into its rotted flesh. I should have ran, hidden, closed the door, anything, but I just couldn't bring myself to move. I could only sit still and stare at the creature, a mix of blood and saliva dripping from its gaping maw. Finally fully realizing the horror of the sight in front of me, I snap into action, slamming the door and bolting to the closet to hide in the basement. Maybe I'll be lucky and it won't fit past the trapdoor. Frantically, I swung into the closet, running to the trapdoor. I make it to the tiny, dried wood door and try to swing it open, but it doesn't budge. I pull again, harder this time, but it doesn't move an inch. Now the creature is at the room door, and I can hear it slam its fist into it as the sound with splintering cracks through the air. Now I begin frantically pulling on the door, trying desperately to get it open, but it simply will not budge. A second impact rocks the door. This time I hear it tear off the hinges and crash to the floor. In a desperate panic, I lean back and begin slamming my heel into the door as a last-ditch attempt. And finally, the door splinters and pops open. Just as it does, however, the closet is illuminated in the same orange glow I'd seen so many times before. I try to throw myself down into the darkness of the basement, but I'm too late. Just as I leap, I feel the creature's massive hand grab my body tightly and pull me backwards. Its hand is so massive it wraps around my entire chest, so tight I can't draw a breath. And as it turns me around, I'm face to face with the beast that is about to kill me. But for a moment it just holds me there, turning me side to side, examining me, tightening its grip so hard I feel my ribs begin to cave inward, threatening to snap at any moment. The pain is blinding, and I can feel myself about to pass out from the lack of oxygen. Just as the darkness reaches the edges of my eyes, just as I feel my bones giving out from the immense pressure, an epiphany hits me. I remembered so many hours ago I had put a knife into my shoe. With time limited and my life on the line, I lift my leg up and grab the knife out of my shoe, holding it high in the air above the beast. I see it tilt its head upwards, seeing what I'm doing. Before it can do anything, I plunge the knife deep into its right eye. The creature lets out a shrill shriek and drops me to the ground, its hand clawing at the knife, still plunged handle deep into its socket. The beast looks up to me, still on the ground, ears ringing, trying to catch my breath. It releases a guttural roar that resonates pure hate. Just then its eye releases a bright flash before a hard shockwave sends me flying backwards, directly into the basement. The first thing I feel is an intense pulsating pain in my head. I can feel a cold sensation on my body and something wet on my face. I move my arms to pick myself up, and I feel a cold, smooth surface that feels like it has a layer of either dirt or dust. As my senses begin slowly coming back to me, I notice I'm surrounded by darkness, and I'd assume it was silent, but the ringing in my ears makes it hard to tell. For a moment I can't make sense of anything. With the intense head pain and ringing ears, my mind is too clouded to think clearly. It's then I begin looking around where I'm at, stumbling trying to keep from falling over as it feels like my head is spinning. At first it's the same darkness in all directions, but I eventually see a small light. Focusing my eyes, I can tell it's a small doorway with a warm yellow light flooding through the darkness. Looking down at my feet, I can see a puddle of what seems to be water, but upon closer inspection, I can notice a slight red hue to it. To confirm my suspicions, I lift my hand to the back of my head, and sure enough, I feel a warm, slimy sensation, and when I pull my hand back, it's covered in blood. Just then, all the dots connect, and it hits me. The cabin, the creature, the basement. I can now remember how I got here and the events that transpired. What had I done? What was that flash after I injured the creature? Did it actually hurt it? Is it over? So many questions flood my aching head. It's too much. I have to sit down and close my eyes for a moment. The small light from the doorway was making my head pulsate with even more waves of agonizing pain. I take my phone out of my pocket and turn on the flashlight, making sure to squint eyes so the light doesn't unleash another barrage of aching pains in my head. I turn the light to my left, and I see a ripped and tattered mat where I had left the body. It just doesn't make sense to me. How could that thing make it down here? But then again, how has this thing doing anything it's been doing? How the hell is this thing even real? I finally have enough of my bearings to pick myself up off the floor. Approaching the stairs and ascending up, the familiar sound of old crying out all the way, and at the top my heart drops for a moment as I see the beast at the closet door. But it's not the foreboding monster it once was. Now it's slumped on the ground, its arms sprawled, and its jaw hung open, a large black tongue resting on the carpet. And where bright, Orange orbs once were now two black holes in the deer skull. Cautiously, I walked to the massive corpse, kicking its head as I reach it, confirming its death. There's no celebration, no confetti or party. I don't jump or yell. I simply look at the body on the ground and make my way to the front door. Stepping outside, I see it's now noon, with the sun settling just under the mountain tops. I sit on the porch for a moment, just taking it all in, happy to be alive, woozy but lucid. I think I'm going to stick to hotels from now on. I say to myself, glad to see a sunset, even if it's just one more time. Story 6. Once you hear it, you can't stop walking in a straight line. It started when I first heard the music. I'm not going to tell you how I came into possession of this particular music, nor am I going to tell you what it sounded like, or anything particular about it. Because even knowing these things can have an effect, all you need to understand is that this particular music, when I heard it, forced me to walk in a straight line. I was at home at the time, in my London flat. I had started to listen to the song with my wireless headphones. As soon as the music started, I felt the itch to start moving. By then it was already too late. But I kept listening, not yet aware of the mistake I was making. And then, just as the first track neared its end, I rose from the sofa, turned and faced the wall, and started walking. Have you ever seen an NPC in a video game walk into a wall? Or a speedrunner trying to clip through a wall to get areas of the game map they're not supposed to? I had walked over to the wall and onto the armchair, which kept me from the wall. After standing on the armchair, I just kept walking into the wall, knocking off a picture frame. The thing was, the music was fresh to my ears and still playing, so the effect was at its strongest. I was completely lucid of what I was doing, but that part of my brain that would signal for me to stop simply didn't exist anymore. The closest thing I could compare the feeling to is being in the throes of an addiction, whether it be pornography or drinking or even gambling. You know what you're doing isn't good for you, that you have to stop, but there's just something not there. The will, the care factor. Did it hurt headbutting the picture frame of my recent university graduation photo off the wall? You bet. Did I care? Certainly. I wanted to stop with every fiber of my being, but I just simply couldn't. I kept going, walking against the wall, feeling the coarse wallpaper rubbing against my brow and rubbing at the skin. I think I lost a few eyebrow hairs in the process. In under a minute, I reached the corner of the living room. There should have been nowhere else to go, but stopping simply wasn't an option. I had hoped, though I couldn't stop, and I was pretty sure I was having some kind of stroke by this point, that reaching the wall would ease the burden to keep moving in a straight line. Thing was, I was already off the line, and it hurt worse than any migraine or worse than any flop sweat indigestion. And still the music continued to play in my head. I was on to the second track, but its effect was still the same. Keep moving. Stay the line. I reached for the door handle, found it locked, so I took a moment to unlatch it. Then the door opened, and I stepped out onto the small balcony, and I kept walking. This was where I feared I might walk straight off the balcony. Below there was a car, which I had to rapidly consider as the least worst option to jump down onto. Besides the car, which was a simple four-seater, all that remained was a drop which would likely break my ankles. That was when I discovered some freedom to my situation. I didn't have to simply fling myself over the balcony. There was no stopping, but I had a tiny bit of my brain to work with to decide how I would get back to the true line, instead of just up and overing myself over the balcony railing. I stopped, climbed over carefully, and then did my best to control my fall onto the car. I landed with a thump, landing squat, and the car's alarm started going off. It was midday, so the odds of people nearby seeing what I had just done was high. Did I want them to see me do it? What if they thought I was trying to do damage to the car on purpose? I moved down the front of the car and slid on down the front windscreen on my butt. I was wearing slippers when I started playing the music. They looked like large fluffy monster paws. I was also wearing baggy PJ bottoms, a loose-fitting gray t-shirt with short sleeves, and a navy bathrobe which was currently untied. My mobile phone was tucked into my right bathrobe pocket, and I had the headphones on my head, The only other item of note on my person were my glasses. I'm nearsighted. On the ground, I just kept walking, moving diagonally across the estate. Should I shout for help? I thought. The music was so loud it was making it harder to think too. I thought about taking headphones off, but the idea of doing so made me almost keel over and vomit. I passed 2 cars in the edge of a large estate building and approached a small garden area with a path which lead through to the middle part of another complex. I knew the true straight line would take me through the very thick green bushes ahead of me, but I found I could muster just enough willpower to walk onto the concrete path. It was like a bargain with whatever it was about the music that was forcing me to keep on the line. I'll return to the line immediately after. Just let me walk around, I thought, and I found I could do just that. I walked the path, stomping ahead in my big goofy monster slippers, and kept going. This took me through a garden area, and then into a small car park. It seemed at first the natural progression was to leave the car park through the way the cars would exit on the right, but that, I quickly discovered, was way too far from the true line. So, like when I had walked to the corner of my living room, I had to walk to the corner of the car park too. Throughout all this, I tried to understand why it was I couldn't find the will to take my headphones off, or to stop walking altogether. It didn't help that it felt amazing to stay on the true line. Better than taking off socks after a long day. Better than the first sip from a freshly cracked open can. Better than Friday night at the end of the work week. And that was just the start of my love of true line. At the corner of the car park, there was a small little hut-like structure. I walked to the edge of that, climbed over a metal railing. Then I walked through a small tunnel to the other side of the estate building. This put me onto the pavement on the other side. And then I walked into the road. The sudden horrible screech of car tires met my ears. I turned and saw a Row-town middle-aged woman in her car. "What are you doing?" she yelled out, though most of what I could hear was still being drowned out by the music. "I can't stop." I yelled back. This answer didn't seem to be good enough for the woman. She got out of her car and started walking towards me. "Stop. Come here," she yelled. "Stop?" I thought. The idea of stopping revolted me, but a part of me wanted to try. This woman was angry, sure, but what if I could get her to take the headphones off of me? Maybe that would give me back my right mind, but the closer she got to me, the more nasty dread gripped me on the inside. Panic unlike anything I had ever felt before started to rise up within me. So much so that when the woman tried grabbing for my bathrobe, I let out a scream so loud I would have a sore throat for the rest of the day. I thrashed my arm back, and the woman stopped in her tracks, perplexed by my reaction. I started to jog, staying true to the line. The woman didn't give chase, but instead, the last I saw of her, she had her phone held to her ear. Calling the police? I wondered, or maybe her husband. I couldn't look back for long, because I walked all the way down the road, crossed over to the other side of the street, and approached a large tree. "Please let me go round it," I pleaded inside my head, but I knew there was some wiggle room. As soon as I realized I could climb over the metal railing, thrash through the bush behind it, and then continue on, the fight in me to resist died out. I did just that and moved beyond the tree. This took me into the driveway of another estate building at the furthest corner of the whole complex. It seemed like a dead end because there were no gaps left. Right ahead, there was just a house. I wanted to stop, but couldn't find the will to do so. The 5th track from the music album. If you feel the need to get up from where you're sitting, that'll be because I just mentioned the music was part of an album. I'm sorry. I'll not mention any more about the music, if it can be helped. So I continued on, and found myself standing outside the house in front of me. The front door just off to my right. The window into what might be the living room to my left. I had hardly any time at all to think about what I might do next. Every second I didn't move forward was like being trapped inside a hot car with the windows shut 100-fold. I tried the door handle to the house. No luck. I knew I didn't have the strength to kick the door down. But what else could I do? I saw in my mind's eye the solution. All I needed to do was drive my head to the window to my left. The glass would break if I hit it hard enough, wouldn't it? Some part of me was excited to try. Intrigued, even. I couldn't move forward on the true line if I didn't drive my head through the window pane. Please, I pleaded inside my head. Please, no. There was an awful cramp in my neck as I forced my gaze to the ground. There was a small stone turtle ornament next to the doormat. I picked it up, and, seeing as it was better than using my head, I smashed in the window with the stone turtle ornament. Move in, move in, move in. My body and mind pleaded with me, but I had just enough lucidity and self-control to use what wits I had left to strike away the sharper bottom and side edges of the window pane. And then I chucked the stone turtle ornament inside and climbed through the window, and it was after landing and getting to my feet that I noticed I had stopped moving. And there, on the carpet among the broken glass, were my headphones. The faint tinny sound of the music on a new track. Again, I'm sorry that you've likely been counting the number of tracks which have been playing. I suggest you don't leave your home for the next few days because you might seek true line whilst driving or walking down the street. Please don't risk it. For a moment I was filled with joy. The headphones were off. I was free, because without the music playing directly into my eardrums, how could it have control over me? To make sure I was free, I stomped on my headphones, my right foot aching from the force it took to render the headphones completely obsolete. I was stiflingly hot in my bathrobe, sweating and breathing huffing breaths. But in the silence of the house I had just broken into, I heard it, the music, playing inside my head. I'm sorry to tell you this, I really am, but the music is seriously catchy. I turned around to face True Line and kept walking. It's been a while since it all started. I'm posting this using my phone whilst on the move. I'll try and explain more, but many obstacles lay ahead. Story 7. I've had a doppelganger my whole life. A bit of personal backstory. I'm Riley. I'm a Caucasian woman in my early 30s, and I live alone in a small town in northeastern New Hampshire near the White Mountains. It's a beautiful area to live in, especially during the late summer. You get the benefits of fall temperature and full sun at the same time, all before it becomes too cold to go out without a hoodie. I grew up in Massachusetts and moved up north in my 20s for a bit of solitude. My mother was getting a bit intense for me, and my dad was always working. So I packed up my things and traveled upwards. But there's another reason I moved up here. I've had this problem my whole life. There's another me. I don't mean like a twin or a delusion or a spirit or monster taking my shape. Just straight up another me. The first time I saw her or it or whatever, I couldn't have been older than 7. I remember playing on the playground after school hours. I kicked the ball over to this line of spiky bushes. Now, being a kid, I was scared of these bushes because they hurt a lot despite not being outright dangerous. Hey, nobody likes pain, right? So I went to grab my kickball, but something was off. I saw a second identical one right next to mine. Keep in mind it was nearly getting dark, and it was just my mother and I out here, and we were getting packed up to leave. I didn't see any other kids or parents or bright red kickballs. Whatever. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe some kid left theirs here. After I worked through the irrational fear I had of the thorn bush, I bent down to grab my own ball, looked up, and saw myself looking right back at me. This other Riley looked just as surprised to see me as I was her. We both made eye contact and jumped back at the same time, each one of us silent and curious, but too scared to speak. The terror I felt was unreal. There's no way this was just another neighborhood kid. We had the same eyes, same hair, same blue overalls, same white polka dot shirt, same light-up Skechers. We even shared the same mole under our left eye. My mom called my name, reminded me again that it was dark and that we had to go. Coming. We both shouted it at the same time, then looked at each other in confusion again. You know that deep panic feeling, where the only thing you can do in order to not lash out or scream is to hyperventilate and pace in place. I had my first taste of that in that moment. Before I could think on it, I shoved the doppelganger into the thorn bushes and sprinted to my mom in terror, sobbing in fear. "Oh, honey, we can come back over the weekend," she assured me. I couldn't get the words out to tell her why I was really crying. I was 7, For God's sake, what was I supposed to say? I just clung to her for dear life as she buckled me up and drove off. As we were leaving, I looked out the window. I saw myself getting out of the bushes with bloody knees and angry tears in my eyes, watching as the real me drove off with our mother. I'll admit, most of those details were fuzzy, but I'll never forget standing up and seeing my own face. I still can't look at myself in the mirror without seeing that other me out by the thorn bush in the darkening playground, staring daggers at me. Those two moments are clear as day in my memory, even if nothing else is. The next time I saw her was my 10th birthday. I had a massive Disney-themed party, as all little girls in the late 90s did. I had to be Cinderella, of course. I remember stepping away to use the bathroom while my mom brought out the cake, promising to wait for me to cut it from where I was in the bathroom. I could hear people right outside as the porch spanned the entire side of the house beyond those walls. It was faint, but I was able to hear birthday singing. Confused, I finished my business and rushed out as quickly as possible. I froze at the sliding glass door. There, standing at my cake, with my friends and my family, in my fucking Cinderella costume, was a fucking doppelganger. As if sensing me, we locked eyes. She stopped laughing into a bite of cake and dropped it into the dirt. My mom tenderly wiped her face clean and got her another slice, but she was barely aware of it. I forget exactly what happened next. All I remember was being so filled with rage seeing this fake version of me being pampered by my own mother. But she didn't seem malicious. She seemed scared. She had the same look on her face that I must have when I saw her the first time. And I had the same angry tear-faced glare she had back then. It was like we swapped places. I remember storming out and tackling the other me to the ground, screaming for her to get away from my mom. The entire party became a panic, it taking at least 3 adults, 2 friends' parents and my mom, I think, to pull me off. But when I calmed down enough to sit still and stop attacking, I just saw my best friend Katie lying there beaten to a pulp. I looked around for any sign of my other self. I didn't see any. Not even a single glass slipper footprint. By now, you might be suspecting some kind of psychotic break. My mom thought so, too. Frankly, everyone I ever relayed the birthday story to did. I eventually ended up in therapy. My mom says that what really happened was that Katie was getting a slice of cake early since she had to go home, and she would say goodbye to me after I went pee. But I suddenly attacked her. My mom thinks I saw her taking the first slice and threw a tantrum. But I know what I saw that day. Needless to say, Katie and I weren't friends after that. I lost a lot of friends, actually. The jealous stepsister became a cruel nickname for me at school, a vicious parody of the party I try to have for myself. Eventually, I stopped trying to convince anyone about the doppelganger story. The psychiatrist at my family therapist put me on antipsychotics. They made me drowsy and hungry, but I started to think that I really had dreamed up this whole thing. Maybe this doppelganger was a recurring nightmare, and I just had a psychotic break from the trauma of it when I beat Katie into the ground. But of course, it's never that simple. The next time I saw her, I was 15. I had my first boyfriend, Anthony. Anthony was 16, short, a little chubby, and really good at math. Not that any of that matters, but it gives you an idea of his overall vibe. He was a nerdy fat kid to most people, but I liked him and we studied a lot together. He got me into anime, and I got him into Harry Potter. It was typical teen stuff. One day at school, I approached him and said hi in that awkward flirty way teens do. He looked pissed off. I asked him what was wrong. He scoffed and said, "I thought you were done playing around with a fat nerd." I asked him what the hell he was talking about. He pulled out his phone, an old 90s flip phone, of course, and began to read aloud. "Anthony, I can't do this anymore. I'm done playing around with a fat nerd. You're a creepy loser who sits around and watches cartoons. Call me when you lose the weight and get some real hobbies." I accused him of making that all up, of course, but he shoved the phone in my face to see for myself. Sure enough, it was my contact and number on the tiny screen. He snapped it shut in my face, called me a shallow bitch, and walked away. I checked my own phone in confusion, and sure enough, I had sent those exact words in the night before, but I didn't remember it at all. Right then, I got a text from, you guessed it, my own phone number. That's for ruining my birthday, you slut. This had to be a joke, right? But no. Spoofing numbers wasn't as easy back then as it is now. Besides, if it was spoofed, my own phone wouldn't have had the records, right? I looked around in anger, fully expecting to see the other me by now. Sure as shit I did. She rounded the corner, quickly at a speed walk. I chased her down into an empty hallway and into the girls' bathroom. Once inside, however, she was gone. Both stalls empty, too. I pulled my antipsychotics from my clutch purse and counted them out right there on the nasty sink, just to make sure I didn't miss any. I had to be going crazy, right? Some sort of schizophrenia or personality disorder. But no, I was taking all my pills exactly as scheduled. Eventually, I started talking to my therapist about the doppelganger again. Of course, me being a hormonal teenage girl in the 90s, he thought it was my period throwing off my meds. So he gave me a new pill that did just about the same amount of nothing. My entire life has been more and more of the same. Every once in a while, this other me would appear and cause chaos in my livelihood. Sometimes I'd be the one being spotted while she was doing something normal, like at the fateful birthday party. Most of the time, it was me dealing with the fallout of something she did. And I feel like it all ties back to that day that I'm the one that went home with my mom instead of her. However, even though her actions got meaner, she never stopped being just as scared of me as I was as her. And the few times I did get her back, I wasn't exactly nice either. I'm not sure that she knows she's the fake one, or she thinks she's real and I'm the clone, or what. I've never seen her do something demonic or supernatural. She's always just been me, down to the fear and anger. It's like we're rivals fighting over the same life. Speculations aside, let's cut to the most recent time I saw her, the start of this week. Now, I've been living here for about 15 years now. The other me's constant antics would get me into lots of trouble, and my mom wouldn't hear a word about me not being the one doing any of it. I eventually got myself off of medication and moved my ass away from my mom just to try and start fresh somewhere. I'd become a bit recluse, paranoid that if I were to start making friends, she'd sabotage it, or I'd see her in my place and repeat another Katie incident. I didn't want to end up in prison for assault or being blamed for slashing someone's tires or God knows what else. Last night, as I was making dinner, she came out from my bedroom. She gave me that frightened look again, which I matched. I decided I had enough. I had to see what the fuck was happening. I had to talk to her. Let me guess. I began choking down my fear and replacing it with fury. What are you doing in my kitchen? She looked at me like a deer in headlights, obviously shaken. You can talk. Of course I can fucking talk, I replied. I just don't bother doing it anymore. You'll come along and fuck it up. Me, fuck things up? Her voice got angry in return. I'm not the one who appeared in our fucking childhood home and beat the shit out of Katie while I was having cake. Katie wasn't even there. I was going for you. You got sang my birthday song in front of my friends, broke up with my boyfriend. It was my birthday. Why can't you just fuck off already? I got enraged. I grabbed the boiling pot of stew from the stove and threw it in that fake bitch's face. She screamed and blistered. Again, no monster reveal, no teleporting magic. No, it was all a dream. She just blistered, like a human would. She grabbed the knife from the table and stabbed me in the arm. We rolled around on the floor, screaming bloody murder at each other. Neither of us agreed on who was the fake. We let our fists decide. Winner take all. I blacked out. I'm typing this on my phone from the hospital. I'm showing this post to the psychiatrist tomorrow. According to the doctors, I had a break after a prolonged period of being off my medication. I poured hot food all over myself, permanently scarring my face and body, and slashed at myself with a knife. Neighbors reporting screaming. Not multiple voices. Just a single crazy bitch with a kitchen knife. Police arrived, and I was on the ground in critical condition. I was out for 4 days from a concussion and blood loss. Luckily, I put my mom on my do not contact list ages ago. She'd never let me hear the end of it. I hear the nurse coming, so I'll end this here for now. Please, if anyone can tell me what the FUCK is going on, even if I'm just crazy, let me know. If any of you know any magic or hoodoo or ancient banishing rituals for this shit, please share. I'm losing my will to do this much longer, and I swear on my very soul, that nurse looks just fucking like me. Riley out. Let's hope I'm the right one. Story 8. Please, you have to read this. This could be the only warning I can give. They took me, and they're coming for us all. I need to write this down while I still can. I don't know they're coming back for me, or if I even have much time left before something happens. The truth is, I'm not even sure what did happen. My name's Henry. I'm 34. I guess you could call me a YouTuber, though that's not really true. I never post anything. I had plans. Big ones. But after this, I don't think I'll ever hit upload. I've always loved the outdoors. I grew up camping, hiking, all that Boy Scout stuff. Being out there always felt natural to me, like I belonged. So when I decided I wanted to start a channel, I figured solo camping vlogs would be perfect. That's what brought me to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. I drove in, stopped at a little town on the edge of the park to grab some last-minute supplies, and then headed into the wilderness, my home away from home for the next week. Or, at least, that was the plan. I hiked deep into the forest, further than most people ever bother to go. The air was alive with birdsong, and a cool breeze cut through the heavy summer heat. The scent of moss, dirt, and sun-warmed grass clung to everything. It was the kind of air that fills your lungs and makes you believe, if only for a moment, that you're exactly where you're supposed to be. I found a clearing about half a mile from a small creek. Secluded, quiet, perfect. It felt like mine the second I saw it. I pitched my tent, set up camp, and told myself I'd start recording tomorrow. Tonight would just be about soaking it all in. By the time I gathered enough firewood, the sun was already sinking behind the trees. I built a fire, simple but steady, and cooked myself an easy meal over the flames. As I ate, the sky darkened, and one by one the stars began to pierce through the twilight, until it seemed like there were more of them than I'd ever seen before. It was beautiful, the type of beauty that takes your breath or makes your heart skip a beat. But one star in particular caught my eye. It wasn't like the others. It pulsed, almost like it was breathing, flaring bright before fading to nothing, only to return again. I told myself it was just a plane, but deep down, I wasn't convinced. Eventually, I doused the fire and crawled into my tent. I didn't want to fall asleep under the open sky and wake up half-eaten by mosquitoes. I zipped myself into my sleeping bag, warm and comfortable, and for the first time in a long while, I drifted into a deep, easy sleep. The kind of sleep I haven't had since that night. The kind of sleep I may never have again. When morning came, I unzipped the tent, GoPro in hand, ready to film my first introduction video. I wanted to capture the moment, the start of what could be my breakout moment. But as soon as I stepped out and looked around, the camera slipped from my hand and hit the dirt, because what I saw waiting for me was impossible. My campsite was a wreck. At first I thought an animal had gotten into it, but the longer I looked, the less sense it made. Nothing was torn apart or chewed through. Instead, every single item I owned had been moved, arranged. My gear was scattered across the clearing like someone had laid it out on display. Pots and pans balanced on tree branches. My portable stove propped perfectly upright in the dirt. Tools lined up in a row. Each thing placed with strange, deliberate care. No animal could have done that. I gathered everything up, trying to convince myself it was just some prank, though I knew that wasn't true. I should have packed up right then and left. Looking back, I still don't know why I didn't. Maybe I was stubborn. Maybe I was stupid. Either way, I stayed. I stayed one more night. The rest of the day passed in uneasy silence. Nothing else happened. Not until the sun set. That's when the nightmare began. I lay beneath the stars again, pretending it was all normal. But that star, the one that pulsed, was back. This time, it wasn't just flickering. It looked bigger, closer. A sharp crack broke the quiet, and I whipped my head toward the tree lean. For a moment my heart nearly stopped. Then a deer stepped into the clearing. It saw me, froze, then bounded back into the forest. I let out a shaky breath and turned my eyes back to the sky. The star was gone. My chest tightened until I spotted it again, a little to the left, shining brighter than ever. That's when I realized it wasn't twinkling. It was moving, and it was getting closer. Then it came. A sound I'll never forget. A horrible, ragged scream. The kind of sound an animal makes only once, right before it dies. It was coming from just beyond the tree line. The deer, the same one I had just seen. I turned toward the noise, heart hammering, and that's when I saw them. Lights, glowing orbs drifting between the trees, weaving through the dark like they were alive. At first there was just one. Then another blinked into existence. Then two more. Four of them now, gliding silently, heading straight for me. One broke free of the trees and slid into the clearing. The moment it did, my campsite was swallowed in a blinding, white light so bright it erased the world. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I knew, I was already running, barreling through the forest, lungs burning, sweat pouring down my face. I don't know how long I'd been at it. Minutes, maybe longer, but I couldn't stop. When I finally dared to glance behind me, my stomach dropped. The orbs were there, following me, keeping pace, floating effortlessly between the trees. I screamed and whipped my head forward, just in time to collide, full force, with something solid. For a split second, I thought it was a tree, but it wasn't. What stood in front of me was not human. I'm 5 feet 10 inches, but this thing towered over me, easily 2, maybe 3 feet taller. Its frame was impossibly thin, almost skeletal, but when I slammed into it at full speed, it didn't so much as flinch. It was like hitting a stone pillar. It wasn't wearing clothes. Its skin was bare, a grayish purple that seemed to shift and ripple in the light of the orbs behind it. The head was wrong, too big for its spindly body, stretched and elongated. And then there were the eyes. They were massive jet black, but not smooth like glass. Fine white lines crisscrossed through them, forming perfect hexagons, as though I was staring into a hive that went on forever. I screamed. I screamed so loud my throat tore, praying someone, anyone, might hear me, that somehow I wouldn't be alone in that forest with this thing. It didn't move. It just lifted one long, stick-thin arm, ending in 3 elongated fingers. Slowly, it reached forward and pressed a single fingertip to my forehead. The instant it touched me, everything collapsed into darkness. When I came to, I was strapped to a table in a vast, empty room. The walls seemed to stretch forever, featureless and smooth, humming with a low vibration I could feel more than hear. My vision was blurred, my ears muffled, like I was underwater, and then it leaned over me. The same creature, its enormous head just inches from my face. I broke down, sobbing, begging, pleading for it to let me go. I didn't care how pathetic I sounded. I wanted to live. I kept asking, why me? I'm a nobody, just a guy with a camera. Why would something like this want me? Was it just because I was there? Wrong place, wrong time? It didn't answer. It didn't even blink. Instead, it raised one hand and waved it slowly over my face. Instantly, my body went limp. My panic didn't fade, not in my mind. In my head, I was still screaming, thrashing, clawing for escape. But my body betrayed me, going silent and still, pinned down by something I couldn't fight. Even my eyes resisted. I could only move them a fraction, and the strain made tears leak down the sides of my face. I had no choice but to watch. The creature lifted its arm. With a deliberate twist of its wrist, the skin along its forearm split open, and something slid out, thin, metallic looking, like a needle growing straight from its flesh. At the tip was a dark opening, hollow and waiting. Then I saw a movement. From within that opening, something alive began to emerge, a worm-like appendage, branching into several writhing heads, each snapping and curling independently as it reached for me. And it was coming closer. The thing shoved the needle-like appendage straight up my nose. The pain was immediate and indescribable, sharp and searing, like my skull was being drilled from the inside out. I could feel the worm-like growth writhing through my sinuses, twisting, burrowing deeper. When it finally slid the needle back out, my nose and upper lip were slick with blood. The tip of the thing was crimson, dripping. If it noticed, it didn't care. The appendage retracted into its wrist with a wet, sucking sound, vanishing beneath the skin as though it had never been there. Then the real pain started. A crushing pressure exploded in my skull. Like a demolition derby was happening inside my head. My body convulsed violently, every muscle seizing at once. I couldn't breathe, my jaw locked tight, tongue threatening to block my airway. My vision shrank down to a tiny, trembling tunnel of light. I thought I was dying, and then, just as suddenly, it all stopped. Air rushed back into my lungs. My body went slack. I could feel myself again, even tried to sit up, but something invisible still pinned me to the table. My chest heaved as I turned my head toward the creature. It was staring into me with those impossible, hexagon-filled eyes, studying me, measuring me. Then, for the first time, it spoke. It touched one long finger to the side of its head, and a voice, not from its mouth, but inside my skull, said, "Implantation complete. This one is compatible." My throat was raw, but I forced the words out. Compatible with what? The creature didn't answer. It just raised its hand again, touched its temple, and spoke once more, proceeding with full DNA extraction. The words echoed in my skull like a verdict. The alien didn't move for a moment, just stared at me, unblinking. Then a section of the wall behind it rippled open, as though the metal itself had turned to liquid. From it, a set of instruments emerged, sleek, silver, impossibly thin. They floated into the air on their own, humming softly, their movements precise, deliberate, like scalpels guided by invisible hands. I tried to fight, to twist free, but the invisible weight pressing me into the table only grew heavier. My chest rose and fell in shallow, panicked bursts. The first instrument lowered toward my arm. A fine beam of white light scanned the skin, then made a soundless incision. No blade, no blood, just a seam opening up as neatly as if I were no more than fabric being cut. My nerves screamed, but there was no physical pain, only the unbearable pressure being opened. Another tool descended, sliding into the incision, extracting something I couldn't see. A sickening tug deep inside my bones, like they were being hollowed out molecule by molecule. I couldn't look away. The alien remained still, its enormous eyes locked on mine. Those hexagonal patterns in its gaze seemed to shift and rearrange, like data being processed. Sample integrity confirmed. The voice said in my head, "Flat and clinical. Proceeding." More instruments descended. My veins lit up like fire as something was drawn out of me. Blood, marrow, essence. I didn't know. All I could do was stare into those black, perfect eyes, paralyzed, while they stripped me apart with the efficiency of a machine. There was no malice in it, no cruelty, just procedure. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I shut my eyes, tried to block it all out. The instruments, the pulling, the sensation of being hollowed out. At some point, my mind must have broken, because I slipped into unconsciousness. When I came to, I was no longer on the table. I sat upright in a chair, my wrists and ankles still restrained, in a room that looked almost identical to the last. Smooth walls, featureless, sterile. Across from me sat 3 of them, identical, each the same height, same skeletal frame, same impossible eyes threaded with hexagons. No markings, no differences, nothing to set them apart. They might as well have been copies of one another. My voice cracked as I begged them to let me go, to tell me what was happening. Their reply froze the blood in my veins. They told me they had implanted one of their own inside me, that the worm-like creature wasn't a tool or a parasite. It was one of them, and now it had fused with my brain. That was why I could understand them. I wasn't hearing their voices. I was hearing the one inside me. I started sobbing, shaking my head, but they continued with perfect calm. They explained that most humans, Earthlings they called us, aren't compatible hosts. That's why they needed my DNA, to replicate me, to make more bodies they could implant with their own kind. When I asked why they would do this, why they would use us like this, they tilted their heads in eerie unison, almost puzzled by the question. To integrate with your kind more easily. One of them finally said, its voice cold and flat inside my skull. Conquering a planet is far simpler from within, less damage to the resources. My chest tightened. What resources? Please, we could work something out. You don't have to conquer us. The three of them leaned forward at once, those endless black eyes reflecting me back 1,000 times over. You creatures are the resource. I broke down, pleading, screaming anything that might change their minds. But they were already finished with me. One raised a long finger to its temple again. Now we will return you. Go and spread our seed. That's the last thing I remember before waking up in my truck, parked just outside the entrance to the park. My clothes were clean. My gear was packed neatly in the back. The sun was coming up like nothing had happened, but I know better. I wanted to believe it was all just some bad dream. It wasn't. I know it wasn't. I know because I can feel it in me. Every word I speak, I have a fight for against a thing in my head. Right, this was a struggle of its own. But the dead giveaway is my head. Under my hair, I can feel it, like veins bulging out from under the skin. And I can start to see the lines forming in my eyes when I look in the mirror. They're coming for us, and we'll never even see them coming. Soon, we will be walking among you unnoticed. Story 9. Animals are terrified of me, except for one. I've never really liked animals. Things like pet dogs, cats and birds always seem like messy and smelly nuisances, not something I wanted as a pet or even want to be around for long periods of time, which is why I consider myself lucky that whenever I visit a friend who had pets, they always seem to avoid me. That's weird. Jack is usually very excited to see guests. My girlfriend Shelby said, when I first visited her house, her dog ran away and hid under the bed as soon as I stepped inside. Another strange instance is that whenever I got near my uncle's cage of guinea pigs, they'd scamper to the other side of the enclosure, squeaking in fear. Maybe you just smell bad. My uncle would tease, waving the air by his nose. Whenever I went fishing with my grandfather, he'd be very unlucky with the catch, only to reel in a few bass as soon as I was dropped off the boat. I never got bit by anything, never got stung by a bee or harassed by the abundance of seagulls. Going down to the beach, it was easy to see flocks of the nosy birds trying to snatch up people's lunch. I just assumed I was lucky when I went the whole day without a single feathered fiend coming within 10 meters from my towel. I didn't think much of these events at the time. It was only recently when something happened that made me put all the pieces together. There I stood, awestruck and petrified, nearly pissing myself, face to face with an enormous black bear. I was out on a camping trip with my Shelby and her family, and I had taken a short walk away from the campsite to take a smoke in private when the beast approached me curiously. My brain went haywire trying to remember the proper defense against a black bear. Make myself look big, or was that for brown bears? My lip quivered. I was certain I was going to die, but looking into those glassy doll-like eyes, I saw just as much fear and panic as I carried, if not more. The bear was trembling. Locking eyes would be stunned as if I was death itself. Then after a solid minute of this frozen stare down, the bear quickly turned heel and ran, without so much as a growl. I was flabbergasted. I looked behind me and all around, trying to see what had scared the creature. Nothing. I thought back to my interactions with animals over the years, and came to a peculiar and unexplainable conclusion. Every non-human creature seemed terrified of me. I put this theory of mine to the test by visiting a small farm with a petting zoo. It wasn't open, but after speaking with the owner and explaining my theory, he agreed to let me near the animals. Sure enough, all the swine in the barn began swarming the other side, oinking and squealing in desperation as they tried to get as far away from me as possible. I trudged closer, and my face loosened in confusion as the pigs grew more panicked. They were clambering over each other, almost forming a pile and cramming into the corner, forcing themselves to get further away even if there was nowhere to go. All right, that's enough. The farmer said angrily, grabbing my wrist and forcing me out. He shooed me off his property with fear wavering in his voice. I don't know what it is, but something dark is attached to you. Scaring the animals like that is a demonic omen. Get out and don't come back. He shouted, I couldn't blame him. It was certainly odd. I didn't believe in things like dark spirits or curses, but it's not like I could come up with a better answer for this oddity. Something about the farmer's superstitious vexation was very familiar to me. It seemed random and unrelated at the time, but someone had a similar reaction to my presence and past. Me, my brother, and Shelby were big on the occult as teens. We would play with a Ouija board, go visit haunted antique shops, and try all sorts of trending rituals like Bloody Mary and the like. One day we wanted to visit a local shop that held items related to spirituality and metaphysics, magic and witchcraft and things of that nature. As soon as we entered, the old woman working there seemed on edge. She had long gray braided hair, and she was adorned in all sorts of cultural relics and symbols I didn't recognize. She looked at me and my friends as we entered with a shocked and fearful expression. Her worried face morphed into one of anger, and she gestured towards us. "Get out!" She hollered. My friends and I looked at each other confused. I said, "Get out." The woman repeated. We weren't willing to argue or question this enraged lady, so we quickly scurried out. Looking back now, that lady was definitely staring straight at me. With all these pieces put together in my head, it was clear that something wasn't right, but why should I care? So what if animals ran away from me? So what if witches didn't let me into their shops? This curse, or whatever it is, hadn't harmed me or anyone else up to this point. I was perfectly content with never getting an answer, as it didn't seem to affect my life all that much. Until a few weeks ago, that is, me and my girlfriend Shelby moved in together about half a year ago, sharing a one-bedroom studio apartment in the city. It took only a few days of living together for strange things to happen. We would often leave the apartment in the morning to find roadkill on the street, not the most unusual thing in the world. But what was unusual is that roadkill seemed more frequent the closer you got to our apartment. One day an entire deer was laying dead mere meters from the front door. It only got worse as time went on. It was once only one or two dead squirrels or raccoons, was now at least a dozen small eviscerated animal corpses strewn about our block every day. The strangeness didn't end there. One time I woke up in the middle of the night to find that Shelby wasn't in our bed, and I discovered her sprawled out on the sofa in the living room. When I asked her what she was doing out there, she said she didn't remember, but suggested that it might be because I smelled like a wet dog. That caught me by surprise. That was something she had said before, but I never thought she minded it. I felt butterflies in my stomach, remembering the night we confessed our feelings for each other, only young teens at the time. I don't remember who confessed first. All I remember is that we ended up in my bed, holding each other close. In that dreamlike bliss, holding the girl I'd loved for so long, she smiled at me and teased, "Your bed smells like wet dog." I was snapped back to the present. Was it a real problem? I showered regularly, wore deodorant, and washed our sheets recently. I didn't smell anything off. She insisted, however, that the smell was thick and overpowering, and that I probably couldn't smell it because I was used to it. I asked her if I always smelled like that, and to my shock and dismay, she said yes. To think that Shelby had simply endured the fact that I apparently stunk like an animal was humiliating, but also made me appreciate that she stayed with me for so long anyway. I took on an unhealthy fixation to rid myself of this stink. I tried all sorts of pungent colognes, much to the mockery and bemusement of Shelby. "Now you just smell like a wet dog in a log cabin," she said after I applied a scent labeled Dry Woods. I then took extra time in the shower, various different soaps and shampoos lining the shelves as I scrubbed away desperately at my skin, determined to purge myself of this stench. But it was fruitless. Every night, no matter what, Shelby would wake up some time before me with the same message. Wet dog. After a few weeks, I woke up to find her making breakfast, to which she said something very worrying. "You still smell like a wet dog. If anything, it's getting worse." Something was up. This wasn't normal. Was it my breath? No. She smelled my breath and said it was normal. Her nose? No. We met with other people and they agreed I had a strange new smell about me. They said it wasn't as pungent during the day and even went away for a bit after I showered. But every night without fail, I'd wake up with my girlfriend saying that the smell had returned. I didn't sweat at night. We had a fan in our room. What could possibly be causing this? I gave up. Shelby just said she would deal with the smell, and though she seemed uncomfortable with it at first, she eventually slept soundly, not complaining about the smell at all. She'd gotten used to it, and I tried not to think much about it after that, until more odd little things started happening around the apartment. I would wake up to find small pieces of fur on our bed, small scratches near the doors, and even I began to smell the faint stench of an animal. Was there something living in our apartment? Is that what was causing the smell? We set up cameras in our bedroom and living room, hoping to catch whatever critter was snooping around. When we woke up, all the cameras were missing. There wasn't a shred of evidence for any kind of break-in or burrow. Nothing was missing, broken, or stolen. We found it hard to believe that someone or something was sneaking around our house just to leave a few strands of fur and scratch marks, then leave. We even developed mild distrust for each other. I asked her if she had misplaced or taken down our cameras, and she accused me of the same thing, this tension between us building. It was hard to fully grasp how strange the situation really was. These strange occurrences just sort of happened in the background, progressively building in intensity to an event neither of us could have seen coming. Then the weirdest thing happened. Weirdest and most frightening. I woke up around 3 a.m. My mouth was arid and my eyelids heavy. Footsteps, undeniably sounding from the living room. Shelb. I whispered. I reached out to touch her, rocking her blanket covered back gently. Shelb, there's someone here. My veins crystallized stinging pockets of ice. My heartbeat drummed in my head. Footsteps were sounding closer and closer. I rolled over to face the doorway, wide open, revealing a black abyss. I studied the doorway for a moment, my eyes transfixed on a silhouette emerging from the darkness. I desperately rocked Shelby again. Shelby, I shouted. The figure in the doorway flinched. Jesus, what is it? Shelby responded. She flicked on the light from the door. It was her. She was standing in the doorway. She was one making the footsteps. My stomach churned. If Shelby was at the door, then who was in my bed? I turned to the lump under blankets, an undeniable weight on the bed. Uncovering the blanket, I nearly puked at what I saw. A wolf, dead mauled. Its fetid half-eaten cadaver left dark red stains in the sheets and fumigated the room with a heavy aroma of rot. I jumped back and toppled out of bed. Shelby yelped and covered her mouth. What the fuck? I shouted, looking closely at the wolf. It was clearly brutally killed. Claw and scratch marks covered its hide. Its entire bottom half was torn off. Intestines spilled out the bottom like spaghetti. I very well may have stayed there staring at the corpse for hours if Shelby had not snapped me back to reality, urging us both to leave the apartment and report the incident to the police. We told her parents what happened, and they offered to let us stay at their house until the apartment was searched and the cleaning company completely scrubbed the place. I'm not going back there, Michael. That was so freaky. Shelby insisted. As we settled ourselves into her parents' guest room, obviously she was right. Between the countless dead animals in the area outside, the smell and the wolf in my bed, it was clear that the environment was unsafe. I decided that once the cleaning company had cleared out the mess, I would return with my brother to move out all of our belongings, as Shelby didn't feel safe joining me. Her parents were more than happy to let us stay a while longer until we found a new apartment. They had a Ring camera and lived about 15 minutes away, so I felt she was safe from whatever animal killer was stalking our apartment. It was incredibly strange because nobody else in the apartment complex reported any dead animals in their rooms, nor as pungent as a dog smell that our room had. The next day, the cleaning company arrived and removed the bed, and I decided to bring my brother Isaac to the apartment to remove what belongings we could. What a mess. Isaac grimaced as he stepped out of the car, observing a squirrel that had been splattered and stretched across the pavement. It took us the whole afternoon, putting things into boxes and stuffing them in the car. The entire time I felt uneasy. I couldn't help but peek around corners and check my back constantly. The sun had already set by the time me and him had moved everything. He leaned up against the car and yawned. Do you mind if I lay down? We came here right after my hiking trip. I'm pooped. Isaac moaned, stretching his back. I let him rest in the car as I went back up to the apartment to grab one last thing. As soon as I entered our apartment room and shut the door behind me, I felt strangely lightheaded. The overpowering scent of wet dog suddenly flooded my nostrils and my head spun. Next thing I knew, I collapsed on the floor and slipped into unconsciousness. When I woke, my face felt rough and itchy against the carpet. My eyes watered and my muscles were sore. Ugh! I groaned, clutching my pounding head. My heart was drumming with fear when I checked my phone. Over 20 missed calls from Shelby's parents. I cursed under my breath repeatedly, scrambling to my feet. Out the window was complete darkness. Night had only just set when I passed out. Now it was nearly 3 a.m. I desperately called back Shelby's parents while rushing out of the apartment. The smell of the dog was now foul and more pervasive than ever. I was so panicked that I didn't even notice that the apartment door was wide open. Michael, where were you? It's really bad, Dash. Shelby's mom cried over the phone. I'm sorry I passed out. What is it? I questioned, sprinting down the stairs. It's Shelby, she's gone. The Ring camera was torn out. All the doors are open. Oh God, Michael, she's gone, her mother finished, audibly horrified. My insides tightened themselves in knots. My face contorted from sheer despair. What? No, I'm coming just. Shit, Dash. I babbled incoherently, not even noticing as I dropped my phone. I burst out of the apartment and rushed to the car. To my shock, the car door was wide open. A trail of blood streaked across the seat where Isaac was resting. Fuck fool, what? I spat in a mixture of fear, confusion, and worry. I whipped my head around the shadowy streets. How could I have let this happen? My eyes followed the streak of blood that trailed from the car and into the street. There, beyond the street lights, caked in blackness, was an animal. There was no better way to describe the towering, yellow-eyed beast that stood in the dark. An animal. It had deep ocean black fur and sharp yellow teeth glimmering with a caramelesque sheen. It stood upright like a person, reaching a towering 8 feet tall. Draped over its massive frame was a long black cloak. Another black cloak wrapped around his waist. It stared directly at me with its hungry, carnivorous eyes. I unconsciously wobbled back and fell on my ass as the large beast started walking towards me. Words could not describe a feeling of visceral discomfort that washed over me. It was the first time in my life that an animal, a non-human creature, seemed to approach me without fear. As it shambled towards me, I could only bring myself to quake in terror. At that moment, as the creature came so close to touching my face with its breath, I couldn't help but feel a feeling of familiarity. The smell, the unmistakable stench of a wild and rabid dog, the same odor that permeated my person and bedroom for all that time. Has this thing been stalking me? For how long? I couldn't help but suspect the beast had something to do with my curse, my proclivity to frighten animals. My mind raced. Surely this monster placed a hex on me. It wanted all other animals to leave me so it could hunt me all for itself, just as I was certain the beast would tear me limb from limb. Staring deep into my eyes with a haunting animalistic glare, its eyes slowly softened. The look it gave me was no longer one of hunger, but a strange compassion, like one I would see my girlfriend's dog give her. I flinched as the beast licked my face, gave a high-pitched whine, then stood up. It walked right past me and back into the darkness, leaving me laying on the floor, dumbfounded. I stayed there on the floor, petrified, before my sense of urgency re-entered my mind, and I rose to my feet. I looked to where the monster had emerged. The trail of blood I could only assume was my brother's, snaking off into the darkness. I cautiously approached the shadows, and couldn't bring myself to look at what I spotted beyond the light. It was my brother, gutted, torn, and eaten, intestines spilling out, blood drying on the grass. His glassy gray eyes were fixed towards the sky. I was too late. He was long dead. I collapsed to my knees. I clutched my hands to my face. All I could do was force the thoughts racing through my head out. If I thought about the reality of what had happened for even a second, I would surely turn crumple into nothing. I was lucky in a sense that something distracted me at that moment. My hands were sticky. I had been in darkness and panicked this whole time. I hadn't thought to examine myself. I looked down at my hands in horror. My clothes were completely stained with blood, my hands and arms caked with the red splotchy splatters of red viscera. The rest of the night was a blur. Police showed up and shoved me in a car. I was taken to the station and questioned. my whole world falling apart. From what I could gather, my girlfriend Shelby is still missing. They suspect me of murdering my brother, as the blood I was covered with was his. I told them I was passed out of my apartment. I told them about the monster, and I could tell they thought I was insane. None of it made any sense. I was beginning to think to myself that I had lost my mind. There was no way that the beast was real, but it was even harder to believe that I had anything to do with my brother's death or my girlfriend's disappearance. I thought my life was over, that I would go to jail, that I would never see Shelby again. But this morning something unexplainable happened. I'm back in my apartment. I was certain I fell asleep in a holding cell at the sheriff's office, but here I am, back at the empty apartment. I don't know how I got here. I just know two things for certain. It smells like a dog in here, and there's an animal out there that caused all of this. The one and only animal that I fear more than it fears me. Story 10. My wife vanished a few weeks ago. October 10th, Monday. I find this whole thing ridiculous. Medication should have been enough, but my doctor said writing would help me, as if keeping a stupid journal would bring my wife back. She disappeared not long ago. One night, I had to leave urgently for work, and when I came back, she was gone. She didn't answer my calls. There were no signs of struggle in the house. Lisa had simply vanished. The police are still searching, but as time goes on, I lose more and more hope. As if her disappearance wasn't hard enough, I started having hallucinations. Some nights, I would wake up to the sound of her voice. Not nightmares. The voice continued even when I was awake. I thought it would pass in a few days. Just trauma, nothing more. But it didn't go away. So, as a last resort, I went to a specialist. And what did he do? Handed me a piece of paper and told me to write whenever I saw her, whenever the visions came, and take my pills. I don't know. Maybe it'll work. I'll try. October 11th, Tuesday. Last night it happened again. I had locked my bedroom door before bed. Around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of a vase shattering. Then came Lisa's weak, whimpering cries, right outside the door. But when I opened it, there was nothing, no wife, no broken vase. Just silence. I keep telling myself these are hallucinations. Tricks my mind is playing on me, but they feel so real. I could swear the sound came from just behind the door. If I believed Lisa was here, I would have gone to her and asked if she was okay. The doctor told me to stay put and calm myself down when it happens. I took my pill and went back to bed. Thankfully, it relaxed me. October 12th, Wednesday. No voices last night. I woke up almost happy this morning. But when I went to take a shower, I saw her. Lisa. She was writing something on the bathroom mirror. With her own blood. It was pouring out of her. Her hair a tangled nest. Her skin nearly green. Her face, it was my wife's face, and yet not hers at all. She turned her head when she noticed me. Then she ran straight toward me, arms outstretched as if to grab me. I slammed the door shut before she reached it, but I never heard her body hit the door. Not a sound. I couldn't bring myself to open it again. So I went to work this morning without showering. October 13th, Thursday. Last night was different. I heard footsteps pacing in front of my bedroom door. Heavy, like someone wearing military boots. Then Lisa started screaming. "Stay away! Stay away! No, don't!" Her cries of pain wouldn't stop. And then suddenly, silence, as if someone had ripped her vocal cords out. That's when the knocking started. Slow, rhythmic knocks on my door. This was him, her killer. Even in my hallucinations, he finds me. He knocked politely a few more times, then stopped. I don't know what to think anymore. Are the pills failing? Is this getting worse? I've done everything the doctor told me. The only thing I know is that I can't take much more of this. October 14th, Friday. I was standing in line at the office coffee machine today. Just as I turned to leave with my cup, I felt someone tap my shoulder. When I looked back, it was Lisa, her eye socket sunken, her hand leaving a bloody print on my shirt, and she was smiling. I could smell the stench of rot on her breath. I panicked and spilled my coffee. My co-worker Marcus screamed. It was him who got burned. I rushed to help him, pretending it was just an accident. But inside, I knew what had happened. After that, I took the rest of the day off. I don't want to leave work. At least there, I can distract myself and Lisa stays away. But staying home feels more dangerous. Still, maybe it's safer for my colleagues if I stay away. October 15th, Saturday. The boots were back, pacing the corridor outside my room. Lisa's cries followed. She was begging, pleading. Then came the pounding on my door, so loud the walls shook. "Carl, please." My wife's voice called my name from just inches away. I got up, headed for my pills. "Carl!" She screamed my name again. I forgot the pills. She needed me. I had to save her from him. My feet carried me to the door. I gripped the handle, ready to open it, until I heard her scream again. A scream no longer human. And then silence, frozen silence. The knocking returned. The killer knocking calmly, politely. He knows I'm here. This time I force myself to take the pills and breathe. I don't think I'll sleep tonight. October 16th, Sunday. I decided to go for a walk today. The thought that a killer waits for me inside this house is becoming too real. Maybe he's hiding somewhere, waiting for the right moment to strike. I searched everywhere, drawers, closets, under the bed. No one. The fresh air helped clear my head. Back home, I picked up a book, Lisa's favorite. She read it 1,000 times and always begged me to read it once. I never did, until today. I opened to the last page she had read. That's when I noticed the stains. A drop of blood on the corner, then 2 on the next page, then smears along the margins. And then I saw it. Words scrawled in blood across the printed text. Reading is pointless. I turned the page and vomited onto the carpet. The rest of the book had been hollowed out. Its pages carved into a cavity holding an eye. Hazel, vibrant, alive. Hers. Lisa's. This can't be a hallucination. I could feel the dried, sticky blood. And I had just taken my pills. I shouldn't be seeing this. None of this should be happening. October 18th. She's at my door every night now. Crying, pounding, begging me. "Carl, please. Let me go. Please." Why? I want to help her, but I can't open the door. I tried talking to her. She never answers, just repeats the same words. "Carl, why? Why? Don't. No. Let me go." And then the killer comes. He pounds on the door, harder every night. I bury my head under the pillow, but the sound never stops. He wants me. Date unknown. I finished the pills. The whole bottle. There's none left. What will I do tonight? Date unknown. She's begging again. My wife. I have to help her. This time I can save her. If I open the door, I can face him. I can protect her. Date unknown. It's a trap. The killer is using her voice to lure me. If I open the door, he'll take me too. Lisa's screams are worse than ever. She says new things now. "My eyes, you took my eyes. It hurts." If I open the door, he'll take mine too. I barricaded it. He won't get in. But God, he's strong. So strong. Date unknown. He's going to break through. He'll smash the door to pieces. I need to call the police. Where's my phone? Date unknown. She's gone. No voice tonight. But the boots. I hear them again. Date, help me. He's breaking it. He'll get in tonight. He's more insistent than ever. The barricade won't hold. This is the end. I'm going to die. I shouldn't have. I'm sorry, Lisa. I shouldn't have. Date, the killer. I saw him. I saw his face. October 26th, Wednesday. The weather is beautiful today. It rained all night. The river down the road must be flooded. I heard the rain stop around dawn. Perfect morning for a walk. I love the smell of wet soil, the crisp chill of autumn air. The forest a few kilometers away will be stunning. Birds singing, leaves glowing orange and red. I'll drive there. I just hope the road isn't too flooded or the ground too muddy. I should wear boots. My only pair are military boots, but they'll do. The sun is warm, almost apologetic for the storm. Maybe I'll see a rainbow along the way. I shouldn't waste time. Wait, is that the neighbor's dog? It's in my yard again, sniffing, digging under the tree. Lately, it keeps coming back, always scratching at the same spot. I guess I'll have to bury Lisa's body deeper.